one for local news, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 1011 everywhere.
It's Friday, November 25th. Good morning. I am Damilola Unime. Right now, under a freezing rain warning in Ottawa, it is 5 degrees and 5 degrees also in Smiths Falls. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is testifying at the public inquiry into his government's decision to invoke the Emergencies Act. Trudeau arrived at the inquiry without much fanfare, entering the building through the parking garage, accompanied by security. He began his testimony by recalling the early days of the trucker convoy protests.
We certainly saw during the first weekend that the expectations that the police had said that they would simply go home, the ability to keep it under control was not exactly there.
The Prime Minister's testimony caps 6 weeks of hearings at the Public Order Emergency Commission. With the weather forecast for Ottawa and the Valley, here is City News meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Any freezing rain, freezing drizzle will switch over to all rain. Should all end, though, all the wet weather around the noon hour. Guaranteed high today, 5 degrees. Tonight, mainly cloudy, -3. And for the weekend, beautiful Saturday. Lots of sunshine, a gusty southwest wind and up to 7 degrees. But then cloudy with some rain Sunday afternoon. Snow mixing in for the evening on Sunday. For today, the guaranteed high, 5.
City News time is 10:02. It is Black Friday, and shoppers were out early. Not in droves as in the past years, but some lining up for deals. Here's City News reporter Chris Curris speaking with them.
No trampling, no arms being broken. It just looks like a regular shopping day.
Way different. There'd be lineups everywhere. And I don't see a single soul other than the people are waiting for work or something.
There are deals to be had, and everyone I spoke to here is here for a specific item that has been discounted. But the consensus also does seem to be that, generally speaking, they are more likely to be shopping online. Now, even at the big box stores like Best Buy, where in years past you might be in a lineup of hundreds, there are only a handful of people out this morning. At the Rideau Centre, Chris Curry's City News.
And worker productivity in the office today could be dropping by as much as the sale prices at the shopping malls. There are numerous distractions during the workday, and Black Friday e-commerce browsing is near the top of the list.
Bosses should not be surprised to see employees glancing at various retail websites today. A survey about worker work distractions puts online shopping at number 2 on the list of things that might just make today a very slow day at the office. David Bolton is a market director at Robert Half International.
One is the distraction piece, that mindless clicking, that scrolling, that panic buying and everything that comes with it. But then there's also that cybersecurity piece. And I think that the two things together, it's not necessarily a reason for huge concern, but certainly something that just needs to be on a manager's radar. Manage, communicate, and effectively integrate these sort of events into the workday.
Other things that could keep employees from doing their work today? Well, just daydreaming about the upcoming holidays and also cheering on teams at the World Cup. At the City News Business Center, I'm Mike Apple.
I am Damilola Unime. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Connecting you and your community. This is the Sam Laprade Show on City News
1011 FM and 1310 AM.
Well, good morning, Ottawa. Welcome to the Sam Laprade Show. Sam is off today. She will be back on Monday. This is Derek Fage, host of Daytime Ottawa on Rogers TV, filling in for Sam. And as we were doing just before our news break there, you were listening in on Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. He is testifying in front of the Emergencies Act inquiry. We're going to go to that right away here, and of course we'll continue on for a little bit.
Just filled with good people giving out medals to worthy Canadians. We're bombarded constantly by demands that she fire the Prime Minister, and in a very, very aggressive way. And that's what I was referring to as tough for her and tough for her team.
Understood. And is that what prompted this call?
It could have been part of it, but I also speak regularly with the Governor General just to check in, and obviously this was something that was worthwhile checking in on. But yes, that was probably the reason.
Fair enough. Okay, so then she asked if there's any sense on how it will be resolved, and you say something. And then now they're starting to do that. Bill Blair has handled a lot in the past, and we know we've heard a lot from Bill Blair at the commission as well. This is not a protest, more an occupation, hard to diffuse. It will take time. Being very careful to not try to fix something we don't have the tools for. And then there's some discussion of the funding. Can we scroll down a bit, Mr. Clerk? Onto the next page, please. And then the Governor General says, yeah, there's some of the senior staff getting a lot of hateful emails asking for the Governor General to fire the Prime Minister and to create these crazy things. It's difficult to receive these things. They made a website in my name saying stuff. Have to let it slide off our backs, and then you discuss the security situation. So is that where you were just referring to, Prime Minister, and
Yes.
the sort of bombardment? Okay. So just generally speaking, before we move on, what was your sense of where things were at on that second weekend?
The first weekend, caught everyone by surprise. Through the second weekend, I think I mentioned it in referring to Bill Blair, talking with the local police with his own expertise and background, talking about things that can be done to try to de-escalate, to start putting an end to this, understanding that it can't happen overnight, but that there are things that should be done. There was an expectation or a hope that on that second weekend, we would see a decrease in activity and a dwindling. Instead, we saw a surge on that second weekend, and things that we had heard that the police were going to start doing this or doing that, and we're going to be able to respond, didn't seem to be materializing. There was a sense that the occupation was just continuing full swing without any real control or even plan to end it. And I know from conversations with MPs and others that the citizens of Ottawa were quite frantic about having to go through a second weekend of horns and disruptions and being yelled at for wearing masks and not being able to go to their neighborhood stores and seeing the Rideau Centre shut down and all these different things that were really problematic, and people were starting to get pretty upset that this was 2 full weekends that they were being massively disrupted by.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Take that one down. So speaking of getting a little upset, the next topic I want to address with you is Ontario's initial response to the protest in those early weeks. So one theme that's emerged from the evidence we've heard, and we've seen several references to it in the documents, is your government's frustration and your own frustration with what might be characterized as a certain reluctance on the part of Ontario to engage, especially in the tripartite tables that Minister Blair, I think, had put together. So, Mr. Clerk, can you pull up ssm.can.nsc 402837? This is the readout from a call that you had, Prime Minister, with Mayor Jim Watson on February 8th. Excuse me. Okay, so I'll just keep scrolling a bit, Mr. Clerk, past the key takeaways onto page 2. So just to stop there, give a bit of situation. So Mayor Watson here brings up the expression whack-a-mole, which we've heard several times in the commission. It's fighting a losing battle. We don't have enough police. And you reply that, well, that's entirely right. I know we're looking carefully at that. We're looking at the resourcing. And then you say on the Ottawa policing side, you've seen, as I have, some concerns on how things were handled from the beginning. And then you ask about Mayor Watson's relationship with the police chief and how they're working together. And you observe that there are moments where Mayor Watson is saying one thing and the chief is saying another, and ask if there's anything you can do about that. So just briefly before we go on, can you comment on that a little bit and the Ottawa policing situation to the extent that you were briefed on and aware of it?
One of the things we'd said from the very beginning to the RCMP and to the Commissioner of the RCMP and to government in general, that if there was anything we could do to support the Ottawa Police Services in what they were doing, if we had resources or abilities, because there is a federal presence in this capital city, we should do it. That we were there to be helpful. I instructed Brenda to try and do whatever she could to send support to the city of Ottawa. What we got back, or what we had heard, as I recall, were different numbers from what the mayor said Ottawa needed to what the police chief was saying they needed. And the one thing that the commissioner made clear to me was they needed to know that if they were deploying resources, that they were going to be appropriately used, that there was a plan for that. And we see it sometimes in requests for assistance across the country, where someone will say, "We need 20,000 police officers," or we need the military to come in with 1,000 troops, or we need this or that in RFAs. And part of our due diligence is, okay, what do you need them for? What are you going to be doing them for? Because, for example, if you're sending in military, as we did in Hurricane Fiona, to help clear power lines, as was necessary in Atlantic Canada, in no situation do military members engage in policing activity. And there was a sense that maybe they could be directing traffic. And we have to make sure, no, they're not police, military isn't there to play police roles. And that's why we always have questions that, okay, we're going to send resources, but we need to know how they're going to be deployed. And there wasn't always that clarity around what the plan was, how many they actually needed, how they were being used, and how they were, where they were going to be best deployed.
Okay. Just keep scrolling down, please, Mr. Clerk. I'll tell you when to stop. Keep going, please. Oh, no, I'm sorry, I missed it. There we go. So Mayor Watson says, "I'm going to ask after this phone call whether the federal government will live up to its commitment. We need boots on the ground very shortly. It's not dying down. It took over Metcalfe Street, blocked all of it." And you reply, "Listen, yes, you can say the federal government will be there with more resources. But again, the thing that frustrates me, and everyone is conflated, but Doug Ford has been hiding from his responsibility on it for political reasons, as you highlighted. And I suppose it's important that we don't let them get away from that. We intend to support you on that." And Mayor Watson replies, "If they keep dragging their feet, I'm happy to call them out on it. It would be nice if we got something firmed up with the federal government to shame them. Ford didn't even make an effort to come and see what's going on." So can I just ask you, Prime Minister, to comment a bit on the politics that are going on there?
Well, first of all, when I say everyone is, I believe, is conflating, it was conflating, a protest of federal issues with a federal responsibility to do the policing that would dissipate that protest. So that was, a little bit of an interplay that there was a sense that in the initial phases of the protest, the Ontario government was happy for the perception to be out there that this was a City of Ottawa issue and a federal government issue, and that as a province, they really didn't have a responsibility or a jurisdiction to play in there. It was a unpleasant situation. There were bad headlines. I was getting grumbled at by citizens of Ottawa every day because the federal government wasn't dealing with it. I can understand that provincial politicians who were being overlooked in the complaints everyone had about why this wasn't getting resolved would say, you know what, let's not poke our noses into this, and people will continue criticizing those people that help. I'm fairly certain that behind the scenes, the OPP was engaged with Ottawa Police Services and was providing supports as we were as a federal government. But I think at the political level, there was probably a decision to continue to stay back a little bit and let us wear it a little bit. What we had seen during the pandemic and during other crises is when the three orders of government are able to work seamlessly together. Not only does it deliver better results and better coordination, but it actually reassures citizens to see that people who are not always politically aligned at the highest levels can roll up their sleeves and work for the benefit of citizens. And that's certainly something that I've always tried to do, and I've been able to do with Premier Ford on many, many issues. But at this point in the evolution of the occupation, that wasn't something that we were able to do. And so, yes, there was a bit of frustration about it.
Okay, well, and we'll see that the very next day you had a call with Premier Ford, and just in the narrative, what was going on at this point is, in addition to Ottawa, and there were a few things, as we know, going on across the country, but by this time, the 7th, 8th, 9th, the Ambassador Bridge blockade.
Just a reminder, you're listening to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. He's testifying at the Emergencies Act inquiry. This is Derek Fage filling in on the Sam Laprade Show. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll come back live with that testimony right after this.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Every year, dozens of Canadians are killed or seriously injured because they take risks around railway tracks. Talk to your loved ones about rail safety. Visit stoptracktragedies.ca.
Hi, my name is Kelly Lee Evans, and I am so excited to be performing for Encore Ottawa 3. My performance will be coming out this week, so stay tuned.
It was our 35th anniversary. To celebrate, we were on our way to Mama Rosie's, where we had our first date. That's when we heard coming from the radio. So we stopped and listened. It helped us get to safety. So when I think of our anniversary, because now we have even more to celebrate.
Heartbeat of Mother Earth, I feel you and embrace your warmth. I see you dancing through the trees. Your song floats on the summer breeze. Community, we come together. We are the voice of our ancestors. Thankful for how much you bless us. Feel the thunder in the drum. All our voices sing as one. Feel the power, feel the pride. Feel the drumbeat deep inside. Feel the boom, feel the bass. Let's let go of time and space. It'll make you dance, it'll make you sing. Ode Wegun, Wedok Wishin. The drum will lead you, take you far. Always remember who you are.
Bipolar disorder.
Substance addiction. Bulimia. OCD. Want to swap?
1 in 2. A flip of a coin. That's the same chance we'll experience a mental illness by the time we're 40. $1 a day can help change those odds.
Play 4 games of bingo from the comfort of your own home each Monday at 7 p.m. for your chance to win money from our $2,000 regular bingo or $5,000 super bingo night. Kiwanis TV Bingo, Mondays at 7 p.m. on Rogers TV.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Sam Laprade Show. Derek Fage here from Rogers TV filling in for Sam. On Thursday, a trio of top staffers in the Prime Minister's office testified before the Public Order Emergency Commission examining the federal government's use of the Emergencies Act. And today, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is testifying in front of that inquiry, and we take you again live to that.
More resources to do that between the OPP and the RCMP. We should be able to get the numbers up in a way that could lead for an ability to use those existing tools on the books. That was very much where our thinking was at that point. Like how many more police officers, how much more resources do you need to get a plan? And if there was a concern around, we can't get those police allocated to us from other jurisdictions unless there is a clear plan, we'll send you planners. We'll help get those people there so you can establish a plan that will allow itself to be deployed. There was really a sense that there was more things that could be done, and he seemed to be agreeing.
Okay, and that's actually what you end up saying in the part you can't see right now of that, the next page, the paragraph.
I am at least consistent.
Exactly. So you say the Bridges and Tunnels Act means the federal government has something. I can't read that anymore, but the federal government has responsibility over the bridge and border. So there's a role for us to play. We're happy to play it, but nobody can get on the bridge because they're on municipal land being blocked. So we'll give you whatever resources you need. The police of jurisdiction need to do their job. If they're saying they can't do it because they don't have enough officers or equipment, we need to remove that excuse as soon as possible so they can do their work and we can prevent Ontario from becoming a laughingstock. Mr. Clerk, just scroll down to the last page, please. We'll skip over, there's some jurisdictional discussions going on there. And then just at the top of that page, please, Mr. Clerk. So this is the sort of the conclusion of the conversation. You say, what are the next steps? You've said the OPP are going in. Are they keeping you apprised, and do they understand the urgency? They can't talk this out for 3 weeks. They need to act immediately. And I'm assuming there the concern of acting immediately is brought about by the situation on Ambassador Bridge, which we heard a lot about from the Deputy Prime Minister yesterday. Premier Ford replies they'll act, but without directing them, it's hard to describe their game plan. They'll have a plan, unlike Ottawa, where they didn't have a plan. I'll get briefed tomorrow from the Solicitor General, would keep you updated. This is critical. I hear you. I'll be up their ass with a wire brush. Then the next, you say, yes, that's one of the quotable quotes of the commission. There have been a few, that's one. The next, your reply there is, well, we're there with resources. Bill Blair will coordinate on our side. You can reach out to LeBlanc, Minister LeBlanc or me. You and I need to work together on this. People will be reassured by the two of us working together. We need to demonstrate this is not a place of lawlessness. Okay, we can take that down. Thank you, Mr.
I will say, though, that they can't talk this out for 3 weeks. They need to act immediately. I wasn't just talking about the Ambassador Bridge. I was talking about Ottawa as well. I was talking about the fact that this simply can't continue to be stretched out this way. But when I say they need to act immediately, obviously, I'm not directing the Premier to direct police. We know all the limitations that we have, but there was an expectation that this was a situation that was going on for too long. And as Doug pointed out a couple paragraphs later, there is a sense that the police of jurisdiction had lost control and wasn't able to control the situation.
Okay, that's fair. Yes, I took the document down before we got to Ottawa, but that's right. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. That one come down now. So shifting gears away from Ontario, we understand that there's a lot of concern coming at the federal government from the United States as well. And again, the Deputy Prime Minister yesterday spoke about the many conversations she was having with stakeholders in the U.S. officials, Brian Deese in particular. And we understand that on, I believe, February 11th, you ended up having a phone call with President Biden. Mr. Clerk, we'll just pull up the readout of that call. It's PB.CAN 6057. Okay, good. Just scroll down to the next page, please. So, maybe that's there. It's got to be somewhere. Keep scrolling until you see a readout. But in the oh no, there it is, I think. In any event, Prime Minister, can you tell us, just the readout doesn't actually say that much, so can you tell us about your recollection of that call?
There were sort of two goals I had in that call. The first one was to reassure him that despite the disruptions to trade and real impacts on both sides of the border, which were economic, yes, but were also people to people. We knew from the pandemic that thousands of healthcare workers cross the Ambassador Bridge every day from Canada to go work in Detroit in their hospitals. There are real meaningful connections across that crossing that were being disrupted in meaningful ways, and I wanted to reassure President Biden that Canada was going to be able to solve for this, and that we were going to continue to be a reliable partner for trade and for people-to-people ties and a safe neighbor. That was sort of in response to his concerns around disruptions to activities on both sides of the border because of the blockage. But the second thing I wanted to talk about was just sort of the general context, the fact that the 911 center being overwhelmed in Ottawa a couple of days before happened from American calls, that there was a significant amount of amplification from certain sectors of the American politicosphere. And there was also a significant amount of money flowing and support for these occupation activities in Canada that were coming from people in the United States sympathetic to that cause and opposed to both he and I in our public health policies, but also in our general policies.
Okay. And would you say that President Biden shared your level of concern about the situation?
No. I think I was much more concerned about the blockage to the lives and the disruption and the potential security concerns. I think he was very concerned, but I don't think anyone was more concerned than me.
Okay, fair enough. It was happening on your side of the border, so that makes sense. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. That's it for that one. So this sort of brings us to a pretty critical time in the narrative of what happened in February. So we're building to a bit of a crescendo around that time, the 10th, the 11th. And we've heard from the clerk of the Privy Council that on February 9th, she advised you to convene the incident response group. And the first meeting of the incident response group was then on February 10th.
All right, we're going to take a quick break here for the news. Again, you're listening to the Sam Laprade Show. This is Prime Minister Justin Trudeau testifying at the Emergencies Act inquiry. Derek Fage here filling in for Sam. We'll be back with more testimony right after this.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Hello, I'm Jim Deeks, host of Canada Files. I hope you'll join me each week for interesting and informative discussions with some of Canada's most impressive people.
Hi, I'm Danielle Allard, and I am a proud Ottawa born and raised singer-songwriter, and I'm part of Encore Ottawa 3. I really hope you like the music and just come and see all of the talent that Ottawa has to offer.
For 25 years, you've been helping to make our roads safer by doing the right thing. You've been the designated driver, you've stayed over, called home, you've called a cab or a friend, and planned ahead. Let's keep doing the right thing. Support sober driving by getting yourself and your friends home safely.
Do the right thing.
Visit ArriveAlive.org to find out more. Arrive Alive. Drive sober.
After a 2-year hiatus, we are back with brand new episodes of Celebrate Ottawa starting this fall. We showcase remarkable people highlighting the city's diversity in arts, culture, sports, and nature. We will show you features that will entertain you and will even teach you new things. Join me, your host, Lila Grind, as we explore and celebrate Ottawa.
October 5th, 2014, my daughter was hit by a train. She was walking along the sides of the tracks, and it shattered her world.
Join me for Season 3 of Paula Roy's Favorite Foods. Whew, that was a lot. I think I need a nap.
Number 1 for local news, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 1011 everywhere.
It's Friday, November 25th. Good morning. I am Damilola Unime. Right now in Ottawa, it is 5 degrees. In Smiths Falls, it is 6. And here's what's making news this hour. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says he was reminded of the anger expressed during the 2021 election campaign when he heard a convoy of protesters was barreling towards Ottawa. The Prime Minister is appearing today at the public inquiry investigating his government's decision to invoke the Emergencies Act in mid-February to clear the trucker convoy blockades from downtown Ottawa and several border crossings in the country. He also says there was a disconnect between messages his aides were seeing about the protest on social media and the assurances coming from the Ottawa police and other authorities that this would be a normal demonstration. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is the final witness to appear before the Public Order Emergency Commission, and his appearance meant tighter security at the inquiry for members of the public and journalists. And 2 minors in Perth have been arrested in connection with a graffiti incident. The OPP detachment in Lanark County says on Tuesday at about 9 p.m., the 2 of them were seen painting a structure on Beckwith Street. After a short police investigation, 2 13-year-olds were arrested and charged with mischief. Their names have not been released due to the provisions under the Youth Criminal Justice Act. City News time is 10:31. I am Damilola Unime. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News
1011 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Sam Laprade Show. Derek Fage here filling in for Sam. Sam will be back on Monday. We're going to take you directly to, again, the Prime Minister testifying at the Emergencies Act inquiry. He is being questioned about, of course, calling upon the Emergencies Act, and recently he's been asked of, how that came to be, who he was having the discussion with. Here we go.
I won't say it had been decided, but it was certainly under serious consideration that the federal government might have to act in some way, shape, or form here. And track 1 was what can the federal government do under its existing authorities? Track 2 was what could we potentially do under any new authorities, including the Emergencies Act. And I just want to pause here and ask you one thing, which is in the documents, that's sort of maybe not the first, but it's certainly the first sort of confirmation, official confirmation that the Emergencies Act was under discussion. But we have seen references to the Emergencies Act here and there in various phone calls or emails or discussions, et cetera. And I'm wondering if you can describe, if someone asked you, when did the Emergencies Act come into play as a possibility? How would you answer that?
Oh, as an idea, it would have been from the very beginning in the back of our minds. As you see a situation that is an emergency, is out of control, has a potential for real impact on citizens, potential for violence, real concerns about what's going on, not just in Ottawa, but right across the country. At the Coutts blockade that started up on the same first weekend that the Ottawa occupation did. These are the things that you say, okay, as we look at a whole range of potential outcomes in this, there might be a moment where we have to invoke the Emergencies Act. It wasn't seriously thought of because I will say certainly in my thinking right now, it was a fairly binary reflection. It was, we might have to invoke the Emergencies Act. There was no reflection of what we would have to invoke the Emergencies Act to do. It was just understanding that if this situation continues and is unable to get under control by anything else, the federal government might have to give the provinces more powers, give police more powers, do something to put an end to this. So whenever we said, yeah, we're looking at all options, it would have been in the back of our minds, particularly because I think we're probably the first government that had ever actually leaned in carefully to maybe using the Emergencies Act as we did in the beginning of the pandemic. We dusted it off and had presentations at Cabinet around what the Emergencies Act was and how it was an update from the previous legislation that had existed before and how it was charter compliant, and because post 1982 a lot of things needed to change for the better in our country with the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So we got a crash course in the Emergencies Act and the consultations required and all the various steps of it 2 years before around the pandemic. As I had said during the consultations at that time with the premiers, I didn't think we needed to use it. I didn't think it was appropriate for us to declare a public welfare emergency. I believe the section is within the Emergencies Act that we would have invoked around the pandemic. But there were a lot of people calling for us to do it because it was obviously a national emergency, this pandemic, particularly in the early days of spring 2020. So we were somewhat versed in this legislation that had never been used. Seeing this particular public order situation, it was a reflection in the back of our minds, or my mind anyway, I can't speak for everyone, that maybe it would end up at this. But for the same reason we were loath to call an IRG too soon in the process, we knew that it wasn't ours to solve at this point, that there were still lots of things that the police of jurisdiction and various orders could and should be, orders of government could and should be doing to put an end to this. So it wasn't until, as you say, the IRG of February 10th, Thursday, that we said, okay, track one, what more can we do to empower police and public safety officials to put an end to these illegal occupations? What more resources can we spend with existing authorities? And track two was, what could we do that we would have to create new authorities for, whether it was through regulation, whether it was through passing emergency measures through the House, or whether it was using something like the Emergency Measures Act. And the key for me in that conversation was it was a shift from that sort of binary frame of no Emergencies Act or Emergencies Act. Because if you think about it, the Emergencies Act itself doesn't do anything except declare an emergency. It's that it enables government to bring in special temporary measures to deal with the situation. So the useful conversations around the Emergencies Act started on February 10th when I asked the question, okay, what are the extra tools that we would need to bring in, either through legislation or through regulation or in various ways, or through the Emergencies Act, that we don't actually have now? Or what would we do with the Emergencies Act if we brought it in that we can't otherwise do? And that reflection on, well, what would be the tools, actually clarified and got the work going. Perfect example was we'd heard consistently throughout that commercial tow truck drivers were not willing to come in and remove trucks. Well, the Emergencies Act perhaps could compel tow truck drivers to come and actually fulfill their contracts that are signed with cities to keep the streets clear of illegally parked cars. So that reflection was really the one that started then. And the tasking that I gave on that Thursday, that we would check in again on the Saturday at the next IRG, was, okay, come up with those tools that we could get at that would solve this, and then we'll look at, well, do we need the Emergencies Act to bring in these tools, or can we do it through another way, or can we convince a province to do it, or are there other ways of doing it? But let's figure out what are the things that would allow us to get this situation, which was out of control, back under control.
Okay, so that was essentially the discussion around the table on the 12th, I believe, and then the 13th was the big day in terms of deciding as a government whether you were going to take that first step and seriously consider invoking the Emergencies Act. Can you take us through, from your point of view, the chronology essentially of the 13th? We know there was an IRG meeting in the afternoon, I think it was 4:30, and the decision coming out of the IRG was to have a cabinet meeting in the evening and to discuss the potential invocation of the act. So how did those meetings play out?
Pendant le groupe de réponse incident de ce dimanche,
during the IRG on that Sunday, we took a very close look at the measures that were proposed, the list of tools that we could give ourselves to help the police, the provinces, and not only just to get a hold of the situation and control it, but also to prevent them coming back. Because you called this the whack-a-mole, we saw that the protesters were very clever when it came to moving around and to have a presence here and then move to another place to give and to turn this into a big challenge for the police and the police response. So the concern, if we put all our resources in one place, we could maybe control that situation, but by doing that, another location would become vulnerable, or once we'd settled one situation, 2 days later they'd come back. So it was more of a question of, yes, to end the illegal occupations, but also to understand that they had to be maintained and they had to remain clear until the situation calmed down across the country. So during the Sunday meeting, we took a look at the various proposals, whether they be for the tow truck drivers or provisions for certain areas that were prohibited. You couldn't go there to protest there. You weren't allowed to bring children there. You weren't allowed to cross the border if your objective was to join a group. And there were measures that the banks could take, that they would be able to freeze the assets of the protesters while they were on the sites, while they were barricading, and to sort of persuade them to go home. So we talked about all these measures. We wanted to see what our options to turn those options into reality. Can we pass legislation in the House of Commons? Can we speed things up to have a unanimous consensus, or can we do it quickly? Can we encourage the provinces to use more of their tools? And at that moment, it was becoming pretty clear that the situation was so urgent and a fear that it could get worse and go into a free fall, and that it was urgent to act. And the tool that we had to quickly bring in those specific tools was the Emergency Measures Act. The other part of the discussion,
because as you well know, you can't just invoke the Emergencies Act. You have to meet a threshold in order to invoke the Emergencies Act. And that brings us to one of the key questions, and I'll ask you about this several times. But what I'm asking you right now is essentially what you can tell us about how that discussion played out in the IRG and the cabinet meeting. And I'll give you a little framing of it, which is, of course, we know that that the declaration of a public order emergency is premised on the existence of a threat to the security of Canada, as defined in the CSIS Act. And we know that CSIS, in the process of assessing the protests, assessed that the protests did not meet that threshold. They did not constitute a threat to the security of Canada as defined in the CSIS Act. So this is one of...
As defined for the CSIS Act.
Okay, please. Over to you.
The legislation in the 80s that was built brought in a definition of a national, a threat to national security, imported the words of the CSIS definition. That was a handy definition that was already existing, and that's how we can define what a national threats to the security of Canadians would be. Those words in the CSIS Act are used for the purpose of CSIS determining that they have authority.
All right, as you can hear, we've been following this very closely. The Prime Minister himself, Justin Trudeau, is testifying at the inquiry. He's the last, as we understand it, that will be testifying at the inquiry. A very important question being asked at this moment that, that they must meet the threshold to invoke the Emergencies Act. So he is being asked if they met that threshold. We're going to take a quick break, and we wanted to get some reaction here from what we've heard so far, but we're listening very carefully in his answer to this important question. And we can go back to it if there's something very provocative that we feel you should listen in on. So we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with reaction from Justin Trudeau's testifying here at the Emergencies Act inquiry. You're listening to the Sam Laprade Show. I'm Derek Fage. We'll be right back after this.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
This week on Simply Cooking by Chef, simple salads that will last all week in the fridge, give you a burst of flavor, and will please a big crowd.
Every year, dozens of Canadians are killed or seriously injured because they take risks around railway tracks. Talk to your loved ones about rail safety. Visit stoptracktragedies.ca.
On Friday's Daytime Ottawa, Misto Fine Foods is going to be joining us on the show. They've gone through a very, very difficult time. We'll tell you about some of their challenges and how they've remained in business during these difficult times. We'll also introduce you to Ottawa-born and now living in Brooklyn, Michael Kaiswalter joins us on the show to talk about his new project. It's called the Moth Project, what's coming to Ottawa. And we'll tell you about a brand new art show right here on Daytime.
Hi, I'm Meg from AIM Fitness, and I'm here with my buddy Fit Finley. Join us every week for Fit Over 50. We'll take you through some low-impact and high-intensity workouts designed to improve your strength and your balance. All you'll need is a resistance band, some light hand weights, and also your water bottle and a sturdy chair. Tune in right here on Rogers TV and let us be part of your weekly routine.
From coast to coast, all across Canada, there's something very special going on. It's time to show your support. Time to spread the word. Time to demonstrate your commitment to safe and sober driving. Join thousands of Canadians and tie a ribbon on something or someone you love. And take the time to have a real conversation about impaired driving. Mad Project Red Ribbon. Tie it, wear it, show it, share it, live it. Find out more at mad.ca.
Hi, my name is Kelly Lee Evans, and I am so excited to be performing for Encore Ottawa 3. My performance will be coming out this week, so stay tuned.
Show continues on City News.
1011 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Sam Laprade Show. Derek Fage here, filling in for Sam. Sam will be back on Monday. You've been listening in on testimony by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau at the Emergencies Act inquiry. And to get some reaction, we're going to be going back to it shortly, but we wanted to get some reaction of what we've heard so far. Jennifer Madigan, Vice President of Media and Communications with Syntax Strategic, joining us. Jennifer, good morning. How are you?
No, I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. So you've obviously been listening in. What has stood out to you so far about what you've heard from Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his testimony?
Well, I think first of all, we have to recognize that the fact that he's there testifying sends a message on its own, right? This is him saying, we're being open, we're being transparent, we have nothing to hide. We feel like our decision was the right decision. So I think that alone is a bit of a strategic move. And when they invoked the Emergencies Act, they had pointed out at the time that this examination would happen and there would be time for them to explain their reasoning. And he's really showing that he's being a willing participant, which is a bit of contrast to others, as you know. Right. So I think that alone is really important. The number of government witnesses who appeared, again, that's all about showing that they feel strongly in the decision they made and they have nothing to hide. So I think that's really interesting. But otherwise, it's been a bit of a slow build today. He's very measured. And I don't think he's done anything that would be inflammatory to either side at this point. I know they were just getting into the explanation of what is a threat, but he's just really reiterating what we've heard so far as well.
Yeah, and you brought up the fact it is. Unlike, I imagine you were referencing Premier Ford in the fact that he didn't want to go. But Jennifer, did they really have any other choice? I mean, the Prime Minister had to show up here. I just can't see that. I mean, if he said,
of course,
if he decided against it, oh boy, how poorly that would look, and that goes for other government officials, especially federal government officials. Something that stood out to me as well is that. They looked at the Emergencies Act during the pandemic. He had brought up the fact that they got a bit of a crash course in the Emergencies Act 2 years before during the pandemic, because the pandemic was looked at as a possibility. And for those people that aren't familiar, it can be declared under a few things, right? A war emergency, an international emergency, a public order emergency, and then a public welfare emergency. And I would imagine that's why they looked into it at the pandemic. So they knew what they were. They knew what they were invoking. This wasn't something that was done at the last minute, obviously.
No, and I think it was interesting that he raised that point even to say, look, this had been presented to us. We did have that crash course. It was determined earlier, no, this is not the right thing to do, right? And I think that also reinforces that when they did invoke it, they knew the seriousness and they really felt that they had met the threshold to invoke it at that time.
Do you think, Jenna, do you think they met, this threshold when you look at it carefully? Do you think it was necessary?
You know what I think we're seeing through all of this, and again, that is the main question of this inquiry is, should they have invoked the act? But I think the bigger question that won't be answered is how did it even get to that point? Right? Because we've seen all of this confusion, the finger pointing. I think toward the end, especially being someone who lives in Ottawa and was seeing everything, it felt like what on earth is going to move this, because nothing has been working, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the bigger question that people are going to still have unanswered, I think, is how was there such a failure between the various levels of government, the various police forces, to have control of this situation earlier on? And we're not going to get an answer based on that.
Right.
So I think even if we come out and say, yep, it was the right decision, it still doesn't answer the question over how did it even get there, because I don't think it needed to get to that point.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Jennifer, because I agree. I was on Rob Snow's show a little bit earlier today, and he was asking about this. Do you think we should have, was it necessary to bring in the Emergencies Act? And I said, I don't necessarily think so. However, the Ottawa Police Services did nothing. The Ontario Police, the OPP did nothing. The RCMP up to that point had done nothing. People were in desperate situation. We're in the middle of winter, the coldest time of the year as well. And nothing happened until the Emergencies Act was invoked. So should it have come to that point? Absolutely not. But nothing happened until it was brought. And I think that's going to be the argument used by many people. Listening to Trudeau, he's saying, Prime Minister Trudeau, he's saying that, look, we looked at a bunch of other tools. We met. What are some of the other things? They heard consistently that commercial tow truck drivers were not going to move in to remove vehicles. The Emergencies Act forced them to do so. So there are some of those examples, I guess, Jennifer, that are saying exactly what you're saying. Nothing happened, and then the Emergencies Act was invoked, and then we cleared all of this out.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
And I think there are some other parliamentary committees that are going to look into this, but I think really that is a big question that we need to have some answers to. I mean, we saw people with hot tubs in the middle of the street and bouncy castles, and I mean the way that they were entrenched and nothing seemed to be moving. The way that we are used to protests. We are used to protests coming in people coming in large numbers, often bigger farm vehicles even, let's say, right? And they roll in and they roll out. So it's not that type of thing hasn't happened before. But yeah, the question is just how on earth did this happen the way it did? Looking at what intelligence, who knew what when, and all of that really needs to be answered, I think, for the public.
Well, yeah, and the communication, right, between all those levels. That's something that has stood out to me listening to this and listening to each police service. No one's taking any sort of personal responsibility, and then at the same time it sounded like the lack of sharing of information that needs to change. That's for sure, right?
Yeah, I mean, I will say this is the most interesting part of this inquiry are these sort of peeks behind the curtains at the text conversations and the various communications between different levels of government. The blame game that was going on. It's really quite fascinating. I mean, it does remind you that they are people, but it's a big contrast to what we see, public facing normally from these people.
Right. Jennifer, really appreciate the time today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
It's a real pleasure. That's Jennifer Madigan, Vice President of Media and Communications at Syntax Strategic. This is Derek Fage filling in on the Sam Laprade Show. Listen, we're going to be following this entire inquiry, this testimony, I should say, of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau at the Emergencies Act inquiry. We're going to take a break for our news, and we will dive back in listening to his testimony right after this. You're listening on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Play 4 games of bingo from the comfort of your own home each Monday at 7 p.m. for your chance to win money from our $2,000 regular bingo or $5,000 super bingo night. Kiwanis TV Bingo, Mondays at 7 p.m. on Rogers TV.
Hello, I'm Jim Deeks, host of Canada Files. I hope you'll join me each week for interesting, informative discussions with some of Canada's most impressive people.
Think it's okay to drive high? Think again. Drug-impaired driving is as illegal as drunk driving, and in Ontario, the penalties are the same. If police suspect you're driving under the influence of drugs of any kind, or a combination of drugs and alcohol, and you fail a roadside test, your license will be suspended immediately for up to 30 days. You'll pay a penalty of $198. And you can be charged with a criminal offense of impaired driving, the same as alcohol. Driving high is never okay.
I'm Julian Armour from Music and Beyond. Join us for a new show this spring on Rogers called Music and Beyond Presents.
Hi, I'm Danielle Allard, and I am a proud Ottawa born and raised singer-songwriter, and I'm part of Encore Ottawa 3. I really hope you like the music and just come and see all of the talent that Ottawa has to offer.
October 5th, 2014, my daughter was hit by a train. She was walking along the sides of the tracks, and it shattered her world.
Is City News.
CIWW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 1011 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number one for local news, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 1011 everywhere.
It's Friday, November 25th. Good morning. I am Damilola Unime. Right now in Ottawa, it is 5 degrees. In Smiths Falls, it is 6. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. It's the final day of testimony at the inquiry into the Federal Emergencies Act, and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is testifying as the final witness. City News parliamentary reporter Cormac McSweeney has the story.
There's heightened security for this much-anticipated testimony. We've already heard the Prime Minister talk about how in the lead-up to the convoy, there was a disconnect between what his political team was seeing online and what they experienced during the previous election to what police were saying would just be a normal protest that they would be able to handle, which after the first week became apparent that they couldn't. He also expressed frustrations that Ontario Premier Doug Ford was trying to stay out of dealing with the convoy. And he was shown a transcript of a call between him and Ottawa Mayor Jim Watson, where he accused Ford of hiding from his responsibility.
The Ontario government was happy for the perception to be out there that this was a City of Ottawa issue and a federal government issue, and that as a province, they really didn't have a responsibility or a jurisdiction to play in there.
We were also shown a conversation between the Prime Minister and then Conservative leader Candice Bergen, where she agreed it would set a bad precedent for the Prime Minister to change policy because people had blockaded the streets of Ottawa. That's much different than what she was saying publicly when she was calling on the Prime Minister to meet with the protesters and get rid of the vaccine mandates. After Trudeau wraps his testimony today, lawyers will give closing statements, and we should get a final report by February 20th. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
City News time is 11:02. Gone are the days when you would avoid Black Friday shopping because you might get trampled. The scenes at the Radio Centre are anything but that. City News reporter Chris Corris explains.
No other way to put it. This morning, the mall was dead. Basically, no lineups other than maybe a dozen people at the Apple store. And when people are here, they're here for an item that they just can't find online.
Because these pops are hard to get and they're going to sell out.
They're not online? I guess it's only in person?
Exactly, because they're only online for the U.S. version of the store.
And most people are here for one specific item and then heading home. And they are appreciating the quieter vibe that comes with this year's Black Friday shopping experience. Now, even at big box stores like Best Buy, I went to one this morning before it opened, and I can count the number of people who were in line on one hand. At the Rideau Centre, Chris Curry's City News.
And the Ontario SPCA mobile unit will be in Cornwall today and tomorrow for the final spay and neuter clinic of the year. The mobile animal wellness services will be at the Cornwall Civic Complex, offering spay and neuter procedures. It's the third of such community stops in Cornwall this year, with 123 spay and neuter procedures performed at those events. I am Damilola Unime. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News
1011 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Sam Laprade Show. Derek Fage here from Rogers TV, filling in for Sam. Sam will be back on Monday. We're going to take you back live to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's testimony at the Emergencies Act inquiry. Let's listen in.
To this situation.
6 éléments qu'on n'allait pas pouvoir
6
amener
elements that
par d'autres
could not be invoked by other means,
la loi sur les mesures
but calling this law on emergency measures, this act. So there was a healthy discussion around the table. Every minister who wanted to express themselves did so. And I won't go into that detail, but I can say that there was consensus, clearly. Consensus that I had to move on and consult the premiers and move on to invoking the Act. We did not decide on invoking the Act then, but I could hear the reactions, just as I did before on the same day with the IRG meeting, that people felt comfortable enough and together enough on this issue. Yes, we could move on towards the possibility of invoking the Act the next day.
Whether the threshold was met. Was that part of the discussion at the cabinet table as well?
Oui.
OK. Et après, et enfin, vous avez eu le même sorte de consensus.
Yes, you made the same consensus then.
So that brings us to what we can loosely call Decision Day, February 14th. And I'm just going to try and lay out the chronology of that day and then ask you, first of all, whether that is the correct chronology of the day, and then ask you to speak to various parts of it. So the first ministers, the decision coming out of cabinet the evening before was to convene a first ministers meeting to have the obligatory consultation under Section 25 of the Emergencies Act before it could be invoked. And we know that late that night, an invitation was sent out to the premiers to that meeting. That invitation did not include the subject of the meeting, and we've heard some of your ministers and officials speak to why. But in any event, so the first ministers meeting was held, I believe, at 10:15 the following morning on the 14th. Following that meeting, you had a call with opposition leaders, I believe, and a call with your own caucus.
No.
No. Okay.
The caucus call was before the first ministers meeting.
Thank you. Okay.
I wanted to make sure that we shared with our members of caucus who were going to be involved in, well, very much a part of a government that has or would invoke the Emergency Measures Act. I wanted to let them know before premiers were consulted. I wanted to let them know that I was about to consult the premiers, but the sense was that caucus should hear it before the premiers heard about that.
That makes sense. Okay, so caucus call first, then first ministers meeting, then I think you spoke to opposition leaders. Then around 3:41 p.m., I said around, but we actually know the minute, 3:41 p.m., you receive advice from the clerk. And that advice, as we know, is that the clerk recommends that you invoke the Emergencies Act, and shortly thereafter, there's a public announcement of it. So just unpacking that, starting with the caucus call briefly, but the focus of this will obviously be the first ministers meeting. Take us through that day.
The caucus call was informing them that I was about to go into a first ministers meeting in which I was going to present them with the fact that we were thinking about invoking the Emergencies Act. And I shared with them that these were the kinds of things that we would be giving police and various various officials and authorities which tools would be able to move forward with that. So I presented it. It wasn't a big discussion. I wasn't looking for consensus. There wasn't a lot of feedback. It was just informing them that we were taking this seriously and moving forward. And I dare say the response was very positive from our caucus. Then the first ministers meeting. As I'd mentioned earlier, this was not the first time I talked about the Emergencies Act with the premiers. I think as Ms. Telford had talked about yesterday, I have had many first ministers meetings over the course of the past 2 years to deal with the pandemic emergency. And we have always worked very constructively together. And for me, being able to sit down with them and highlight that we were seriously considering invoking the Emergencies Act in order to do the following things. And I wanted to hear from them. And then I went around the table across the country to hear from each of them on their reflections, their inputs, their concerns, their support, their disagreements in some cases, but really wanted to hear what it was that they were going to be, what their thinking was on this situation that would, by definition, affect all of them on a situation that was, to a certain extent, affecting all of them. At the end of that meeting, I reached out to the opposition leaders, had conversations with them about what I was reflecting on doing, and asked for their support. And then started preparing for a potential announcement that afternoon as the note from the clerk came in, making the official recommendation to the government that we invoke the Emergencies Act.
Okay, so let me start with an initial question, taking you back to first thing in the morning. Had you made up your mind already?
No. I was a long way down the road of realizing that it was probably the path we needed to take, but I did not make up my mind until the note from the clerk was in front of me, and it was in black and white that the public service made a formal recommendation that I invoke the Emergencies Act. If I'd gotten to that point and they had said, no, we still don't think the threshold is met, it is possible that we wouldn't be here today, and I would not have invoked it, but I don't know. But the fact that when that note came in, I made that final decision with all the conversations, all the inputs, and all the feedback that I'd gotten from caucus, from cabinet, and from first ministers and opposition leaders, and all the officials I'd talked to. That was when I made the decision.
So going back to the first minister's meeting, then we understand it lasted about an hour, and all of the premiers had a chance to voice their opinions and their concerns. But is there anything they could have said or done at that point to change your mind?
Absolutely. If someone had said, listen, I hear those 6 things you're planning on doing, you don't need them, because these are the tools we're going to use instead. We have the power. We're going to be able to, in Ontario, do this, and we're confident that that will end the situation in Ottawa and end the situation at potential blockades for law and keep us safe. You don't need to bring in compelling of tow truck drivers, because we've figured out how to do it for good. We have a plan to put an end to this in a concrete and compelling way, because I'd heard a lot of plans up until that point. But if I had been convinced that other orders of government or any other law in Canada was sufficient to deal with this emergency, then we wouldn't have met the threshold, because part of the threshold for the Emergencies Act is and is unable to be dealt with under any other measures or laws in Canada. And if they had said convincingly, or enough of them had said, no, you don't need it because we have it under control, which is to a certain extent what they all said to me when I had this conversation with them around the pandemic. I said, listen, there's a lot of pressure for us to look at the Emergencies Act. Do we need to bring in the Emergencies Act? And they all said, no, don't bring in the Emergencies Act. We've got it under control. We're able to do this in our own jurisdictions, in our healthcare systems. We don't need to do it. Public order emergency is different than public welfare emergency, but that principle was there, and we didn't invoke the Act back in the spring of 2020. So yes, they could have said things that prevented me, that would have said, okay, let's give it a few more days, or let's not do this at all. They said lots of things, but that threshold that I had personally wasn't met.
And you mentioned, I mean, some of them did express opinions around the lines of, well, we got it under control here. This problem isn't really cropping up here, or it's cropping up here in a way that our law enforcement can deal with. So are you drawing a distinction there between, okay, the premiers may say it's under control here, but that doesn't mean it's under control everywhere. So they would have had to come to you with something that would have solved the big problem as you saw it? Is that?
I think there just would have been a sense that the measures I was proposing weren't going to be useful or effective. And what I heard on the contrary was concerns that we'd shared that this might inflame the protesters to declare a public order emergency and bring in martial law, which was one of the concerns, or that they would interpret it as that. Of course, it wasn't martial law, and it did not suspend people's fundamental rights and freedoms. But it at the same time, they expressed these concerns, which we had shared, but I was balancing off against, okay, there is a danger of further inflaming the situation, but the situation was already pretty inflamed, and my concern was if we continue to not do anything, are enough citizens going to start counter-protesting and taking things into their own hands at various places across the country that we do get into dangerous, violent situations. Even Premier Moe, I believe, we could pull it up, but I think people have seen it a few times, highlighted that he didn't have any real, that the 6 elements we had seemed reasonable enough, but he was in disagreement with the invocation of the Emergencies Act, that those 6 elements we should maybe move forward with in some way, but without doing the Emergencies Act. That was something that we'd looked at trying to do as well. But it was clear that in order to do those, bring in those tools, the Emergencies Act was the vehicle that was created for that purpose so that we could respond to a national emergency. Jason Kenney, I believe, said...
All right, on that response, I know that obviously Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is continuing in his answer on this, but we're going to take a break here on the Sam Laprade Show. This is Derek Fage filling in for Sam Laprade, and of course you're watching on Rogers TV and listening on City News. We'll be right back.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Join me for Season 3 of Paula Roy's Favorite Foods. Whew, that was a lot. I think I need a nap. This week on Simply Cooking by Chef, simple salads that will last all week in the fridge, give you a burst of flavor, and will please a big crowd.
Should never have agreed to this last race. She's too old. Eddie!
Johnson, hang it, Mac! Get to it, Mac!
Here's there's some kind of difficulty.
Seems to be something loose up there, I believe. The console's foul!
Just once more, old girl, and you can rest.
Last race and still undefeated. The Blue Nose out of Lunenburg, Nova Scotia was fastest in the world for almost 20 years.
What is it?
Anxiety disorder.
Depression.
PTSD. 1 in 2, a flip of a coin. That's the same chance we'll experience a mental illness by the time we're 40. $1 a day can help change those odds and bring hope to those in need.
Every year, dozens of Canadians are killed or seriously injured because they take risks around railway tracks. Talk to your loved ones about rail safety. Visit stoptracktragedies.ca.
Hi, my name is Kelly Lee Evans, and I am so excited to be performing for Encore Ottawa 3. My performance will be coming out this week, so stay tuned.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Sam Laprade Show. Derek Fage here from Rogers TV filling in for Sam. We're going to dive right back in because Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is the last to testify at the Emergencies Act inquiry, and he has been on the stand so far since 9:30 this morning. We join that in progress right now.
And as the Prime Minister, I get to sign off and agree with these notes, or in some cases disagree with them. And that was a moment that I took with the weight of the decision I was about to take. And I reflected briefly on, first of all, the reassurance that it gave me that the entire system, all the inputs in the system had come up to the clerk of the Privy Council, the top public servant in Canada, impartial, professional public service, making the recommendation to move forward on this was essential to me. But I also reflected on, okay, what if I don't sign it? What if I say, okay, we now have advice from the professional public service to invoke a public order emergency. And I decide, you know what? Let's give it a few days. Where the professional public service had made a determination that the thresholds were met, that the use of it was appropriate and, responsible, and the measures were the right ones that we were going to put in it. And I said, no, you know what? Let's wait and see another few days, another week to see if we really need to do it. First of all, what if the worst had happened in those following days? What if someone had gotten hurt? What if a police officer had been put in a hospital? What if when I had an opportunity to do something, I had waited and we had the unthinkable happen over the coming days, even though there was all this warning that it was possibly coming? I would have warned that in a way that we would certainly be talking about in a forum such as this. But more than that, the responsibility of a prime minister is to make the tough calls and keep people safe. And this was a moment where the collective advice of cabinet, of the public service, and my own inclination was that this was a moment to do something that we needed to do to keep Canadians safe. And knowing full well that this was an inevitable consequence of me signing, I agree, on this note, I was very comfortable that we were at a moment where this was the right thing to do. And we did it. And it is a certain amount of comfort that, first of all, the system is working as it should, that people who are defending civil liberties are able to say, you really should be careful about doing this, maybe you shouldn't have done it, that we have a system pushing back on this, because it's a big thing, not a small thing to do this. But that also, we were able to solve the situation with it. That there was no loss of life, there was no serious violence, that we were able to get neighborhoods back under control, border services opened, and there haven't been a recurrence of these kinds of illegal occupations since then. I'm not going to pretend that it's the only thing that could have done it, but it did do it. And that colors the conversations we're having now with the fact that these could be very different conversations. And I am absolutely serene and confident that I made the right choice in agreeing with the invocation.
Okay, Mr. Commissioner, definitely a good time for a break.
Okay, so we'll take the morning break. We'll take 50.
All right. Looks like Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's testimony at the Emergencies Act inquiry that they'll be taking a break. A good time to remind you that you are listening to the Sam Laprade Show. If you're wondering, hey, I don't hear Sam Laprade. Sam is off today. Sam will be back on Monday. This is Derek Fage filling in for Sam today. And of course, we wanted to make sure we brought you all of the testimony here from Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Just going over some of the things that we've heard. It's been very interesting listening in because he mentioned that the Emergencies Act was in the back of their minds even before the convoy had arrived. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau testifying that they had received a crash course in the Emergencies Act 2 years before because during the pandemic that was looked at as a possibility of using the Emergencies Act for the welfare of the country due to the global pandemic. He also looked at a few other things, trying to create new authorities. The key to some of the conversation was a shift in sort of their frame of mind of, do we have the tools available without invoking the Emergencies Act, and how quickly can we bring that or those tools through legislation in order to remove the protesters? He heard consistently that commercial tow truck drivers would not move in to remove vehicles. He felt that invoking the Emergencies Act would force them to do so. He has repeated many times that they looked at all the tools. They had, of course, many meetings. They saw that the protesters were very clever in moving around, making it a challenge for police. They felt that perhaps another situation or location could become vulnerable if they did not use the Emergencies Act, if they just got the vehicles out of the way, and then perhaps they would find another place to make their headquarters and camp. So those are some of the things. He seems to be very confident in his justification that the threshold was met for the Emergencies Act. So we're gonna dive back into this. We're gonna stop for the news right now. Again, you're listening to the Sam Laprade Show. This is Derek Fage filling in. You're watching on Rogers TV and listening on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Play 4 games of bingo from the comfort of your own home each Monday at 7 p.m. for your chance to win money from our $2,000 regular bingo or $5,000 super bingo night. Kiwanis TV Bingo, Mondays at 7 p.m. on Rogers TV.
After a night out with your friends, not having a plan for a safe ride home can leave you in a bad spot. You could end up riding in a police car, an ambulance, or a hearse. These unplanned modes of transportation can be a costly choice and do not take you home. Your plan could include a designated driver, a taxi, or public transit. Drink responsibly, choose your ride, and have a plan for a safe ride home.
Visit arrivealive.org to find out more.
Once upon a time in a nursery rhyme, there were 3 bears. 1,
to 3 bears, and they went a walking in the cool woods atop.
Rogers TV invites you to let your imagination roam as we present Ottawa storytellers. Each week, we'll present a collection of original creative stories and inspirations for children of all ages. Join us for Ottawa Storytellers on Rogers TV.
Hello, I'm Jim Deeks, host of Canada Files. I hope you'll join me each week for interesting and informative discussions with some of Canada's most impressive people.
Hi, I'm Danielle Allard, and I am a proud Ottawa born and raised singer-songwriter, and I'm part of Encore Ottawa 3. I really hope you like the music and just come and see all of the talent that Ottawa has to offer.
Number 1 for local news, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 1011 everywhere.
It's Friday, November 25th. Good morning. I am Damilola Unime. Right now in Ottawa, it is 5 degrees. In Smiths Falls, it is 6. And here's what's making news this hour. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says he was reminded of the anger over COVID-19 mandates during the 2021 election campaign when he heard a convoy of protesters was barreling towards Ottawa. Trudeau is appearing today at the final hearing of the Public Order Emergency Commission inquiry investigating the decision to invoke the Emergencies Act. He also says there was a disconnect between messages his aides were seeing about the protest on social media and the assurances coming from the Ottawa Police and other authorities. Trudeau also told the inquiry that Governor General Mary Simon was getting bombarded with calls from protesters demanding that she fire him and install some form of committee with the protesters to lead the government instead. The federal health minister says the previously announced 1 million units of imported kids' pain relievers are starting to arrive on pharmacy shelves. He also says an additional 500,000 foreign units have been ordered and will arrive over the next few weeks. Parents across the country have been scrambling to manage their children's fever and pain as rates of respiratory syncytial virus and influenza skyrocket amid a dire shortage of pediatric medicine. Meanwhile, Quebec is making the flu vaccine free for all residents this year. The shots had only been free for certain high-risk groups and for healthcare workers. Health officials say today the government reversed position because of the high levels of influenza, RSV, and the novel coronavirus circulating in the province. The health department says the flu vaccine will be available for free to anyone who wants it starting today. City News time is 11:32. I am Damilola Unime. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News
1011 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Sam Laprade Show. Derek Fage here, filling in for Sam. Sam will be back on Monday. Thanks so much for spending some of your day with us here on City News. We really appreciate it. For those of you just joining us now, if you haven't been listening in, we've been following along Prime Minister Justin Trudeau testifying at the Emergencies Act inquiry. They've taken a bit of a break. It looks like it's about a 15-minute break. So it just gives us an opportunity to go over some of the things that we've heard over the last couple of days. In particular, on Thursday, a trio of top staffers in the Prime Minister's office testified before the Public Order Emergency Commission examining the federal government's use of the Emergency Act. So we heard from Chief of Staff Katie Telford, Deputy Chief of Staff Brian Clow, and Director of Policy John Broadhead. They took the stand as a panel, actually, testifying about the roles they played during the Freedom Convoy protests. According to an institutional report submitted to the Commission from the PMO, the first call the PMO and ministerial staff had was to talk about the Freedom Convoy happened on January 20th. That was 1 week before the convoy was slated to roll into the nation's capital, and then shortly after, they first started hearing about what may be coming and what some protesters' intentions may have been. Trudeau started to receive kind of daily updates on the situation at that time. So again, that was January 20th, 1 week before the convoy, something we learned yesterday during testimony. The PMO report also noted that Trudeau's office began to make security and travel arrangements for its staff, as well as the PM and ministers, and that by January 27th, PMO staff were advised to work from home for safety reasons, something the report indicates had never been done before. The decision to invoke on February 4th was made after a series of discussions and inputs. The view was the time was up, needed to be enacted right away. That, according to Deputy Chief of Staff Brian Clow. So that's just some of the things that we heard on Thursday. The other notable piece of information we heard on Thursday came from PMO staffers participating in the commission was that, according to them, the newly minted interim Conservative leader, Candice Bergen, acknowledged that there were significant concerns about whom the federal government could engage with and setting a bad precedent. This excerpt was contained in a summary provided by the Commission of a previous interview the PMO witnesses had with the Commission. Here's what it said. So Mr. Clow explained that as engagement with those involved in the occupations was considered more than once as a possible option for the resolution of the occupation. For example, after the meeting of the Chiefs of Staff on February 3rd, Mr. Clow recalls Ms. Telford asking whether interim leader of the opposition, Candice Bergen, could help. It's just very interesting. The PM had a conversation with Ms. Bergen that same day. Ms. Telford added that during the call, Ms. Bergen acknowledged that there were significant concerns about whom the federal government could engage with, and with that, setting a bad precedent. Just some other interesting things that have come out of this. Some notable takeaways from Chrystia Freeland's testimony. One of the main points that Freeland really tried to drive home through her testimony was how gravely concerned senior U.S. officials were about the impact of the Freedom Convoy protests and border blockades were having on cross-border trade. There obviously is conflicting opinions on that, because the Freedom Convoy, many people are saying, didn't necessarily impact the cross-border trade between Canada and the U.S. Certainly the border blockades, but those were removed before the Freedom Convoy was initially. She went on to cite that the automotive manufacturing sector was a core example of that, fearing that border shutdowns would have long-term effects on Canadian companies. Freeland was asked about a February 10th email she wrote to top federal officials following a phone call she had with White House Director of National Economic Council Brian Deese. And according to that email, U.S. President Joe Biden's top economic policy advisor called her and was very, very worried about the Ambassador Bridge border blockade. Here's what Freeland then told the commission about that particular interaction. Just quoting Chrystia Freeland here, "What was striking to me about the conversation I had with him is he is a person who is very hard for Canadians to get a hold of. And so what was really striking to me was how quickly he got on the phone with me. It was instant. And while in some ways, that was in a practical matter, that was good, but it gave me a measure of how worried the White House was about this." She goes on to say, "This was worrying to me because I could see really for the first time ever the Americans having this amber light flashing in Canada, and this amber light said to them, you know what, the Canadian supply chain could be a vulnerability." So again, just sort of a reminder of what we have heard so far. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau set to return. He's been sharing testimony so far all morning. This began at about 9:30 a.m. this morning. There was also some really interesting sort of standout text exchanges that have happened over the last few weeks that a lot of people have been talking about. I can go over some of those before Justin Trudeau returns for his testimony, but there were just some that has stood out to me. I know that according to text messages, that Intergovernmental Affairs Minister Dominic LeBlanc said Jason Kenney wrote, the then Premier of Alberta, of course, accused the federal government of not caring about the Canada-United States border closure in Coutts, Alberta. Around dawn on February 14th, the RCMP arrested more than a dozen Coutts protesters and seized a cache of weapons, body armor, ammunition just hours before the Emergencies Act was invoked. According to the messages LeBlanc shared with Transport Minister Omar Agabra and Public Safety Minister Marco Medicino, 3 days earlier, Kenney accused the federal government of leaving the provinces holding the bag on protest enforcement. These texts were brought up during testimony and were in documents released by the inquiry this week. In texts attributed to Kenney, he also complained about the federal decision to decline Alberta's request for military equipment that could remove the protest vehicles. One message said in an apparent reference to the Prime Minister that your guy has really, this isn't my words, Jason Kenney, has really screwed the pooch. So some very strong language we've seen. Ontario's Sylvia Jones giving a cold response with some of her messaging. Can we have my boss reach out again to Sylvia Jones? But last call got pretty frosty at the end when Medicino was saying we need the province to get back to us with their plan. That's what Jones had written. And then the staffer continued on, I don't take edicts from you. You're not my bleeping boss. So again, things were getting very tense, very emotional throughout this entire period. Lametti called Ottawa's police chief at the time, Peter Slowly, incompetent. Lametti going on to say that I was stunned by the lack of a multi-layered plan. Completely frustrated, I have to admit, he said. There was the back and forth with Trudeau and Blair taking aim at Premier Doug Ford, which many of us here in Ottawa were quite surprised that he never really made an appearance. Many people felt that Ottawa was left out as far as the Premier was concerned during a private call, when then Ottawa Mayor Jim Watson, in February, that was in early February, Trudeau accused Ontario Premier Doug Ford of hiding from his responsibilities. Trudeau went on to say Doug Ford has been hiding from his responsibility on it for political reasons, as you highlighted that in reference to a conversation with Jim Watson. And then Preparedness Minister Bill Blair, Emergency Preparedness Minister Bill Blair, to his chief of staff, also shared a few choice words about the Premier, saying, I'm embarrassed for my former profession and worried for my government, which is being made to look weak and ineffective. That was Blair, former Toronto police chief, said in a text message. I can't believe that I'm hoping Doug Ford will save us, he went on to say. So again, we're not going to find out everything. We'll jump back in here when we can. Again, there's a break here with the inquiry. There's supposed to be a 15-minute break. It's taken a little bit longer than we expected. Some of the things we've learned is that the Emergencies Act was in the back of their minds even before the convoy arrived in Ottawa. And they got to. I'm just hearing now that we're back on. So Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is back for his testimony here at the Emergencies Act inquiry. We'll join that now.
It requires. They're written for situations where the emergency or the urgency requires a government to have tools to put into place in unforeseen circumstances that can't be anticipated years or decades in advance. But that's why it was an important debate when it was brought in. And that's why there are mechanisms afterwards to ensure that it was not used erroneously or lightly. First mechanisms, votes, a vote in the House. Next one, a parliamentary committee designed to look into it. The third one, and most importantly, this process itself, which is a really important one that I knew from the moment I invoked that we were going to end up in a room such as this doing this work. And I would have to explain, and we as a government would have to explain and justify this decision to Canadians, because the use of special temporary emergency powers is something that Canadians need to be reassured is within the rules and the principles of our democracy, and that's exactly what this is.
Do you think the accountability mechanism?
All right, we're gonna wrap up this coverage for you at the moment because we've got fabulous guests waiting for us coming up after the break. Clinton Wilkins from Centrum Home Lenders Ltd. will be joining us on the show. Going to do a little Mortgage 101. And just a reminder, by the way, if you're not familiar, November is Financial Literacy Month. Mortgage, of course, is the biggest. Your home is the biggest investment you will probably ever make, if you can certainly afford one, which has been, of course, in the news quite a bit. However, want to let you know that we're covering this at City News throughout the entire day. During our news pieces, we're going to summarize some of the main points that we've heard from the testimony from our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau. He is the last to testify at the Emergencies Act inquiry, so we will keep you informed all day long on that. This is Derek Fage. I'm filling in for Sam Laprade. You're watching on Rogers TV and listening on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
October 5th, 2014, my daughter was hit by a train. She was walking along the sides of the tracks, and it shattered her world.
Join me for Season 3 of Paula Roy's Favorite Foods. Whew, that was a lot. I think I need a nap.
On Friday's Daytime Ottawa, Misto Fine Foods is going to be joining us on the show. They've gone through a very, very difficult time. We'll tell you about some of their challenges and how they've remained in business during these difficult times. We'll also introduce you to Ottawa-born and now living in Brooklyn, Michael Kaiswalter joins us on the show to talk about his new project. It's called the Moth Project, what's coming to Ottawa. And we'll tell you about a brand new art show right here on Daytime.
Summer days, summer nights, lots of things to do, places to go, and people to see. If you're having a few drinks, be sure to plan ahead and get home safely. We don't want to pick you up. Drinking drivers risk injuries to themselves and others and take chances with their license, their jobs, and their future. Remember what's at stake and choose your ride, whether you're the driver, the passenger, or the party host. Thanks for supporting sober driving. I hope we never meet.
Visit arrivealive.org to find out more.
After a 2-year hiatus, we are back with brand new episodes of Celebrate Ottawa starting this fall. We showcase remarkable people highlighting the city's diversity in arts, culture, sports, and nature. We will show you features that will entertain you and will even teach you new things. Join me, your host, Lila Grind, as we explore and celebrate Ottawa.
Bipolar disorder,
substance addiction, bulimia, OCD. Want to swap?
One in two, a flip of a coin. That's the same chance we'll experience a mental illness by the time we're 40. $1 a day can help change those odds.
This week on Simply Cooking by Chef, simple salads that will last all week in the fridge, give you a burst of flavor, and will please a big crowd.
Every year, Dozens of Canadians are killed or seriously injured because they take risks around railway tracks. Talk to your loved ones about rail safety. Visit stoptracktragedies.ca.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Sam Laprade Show. Derek Fage here filling in for Sam. We're going to take a break from Justin Trudeau's testimony at the Emergencies Act inquiry. As I said, we're going to be following this at City News, and we'll summarize things for you, of course, and make sure we bring you some of the top findings. As far as we're concerned, some of the biggest news items that have come out of Justin Trudeau's inquiry this morning. But you know what? This is the Sam Laprade Show. We got to change things up a little bit. We got to bring some of our regular guests on and talk about the news of the day, talk about things that are affecting us in our community, and certainly housing is one of those things. And we are joined by Clinton Wilkins from Centrum Home Lenders. Welcome to the show, Clinton.
Thanks for having me. How's your day going?
It's going well. I mean, it's been busy following this inquiry. We're looking at it very closely. It's been very interesting to follow so far. But as I said, want to switch things up a little bit. And housing is certainly something we've been talking about right across the country. November also being Financial Literacy Month, and as I said, just teasing the fact you were coming up. Your home is the biggest investment you're going to make. Let's maybe an opportunity, Clinton, to give a little mortgage 101, because there are a few things that you need to look at before you even start, shopping around, and that is, of course, pre-qualification, pre-approval. Let's talk about those two things to start.
Yeah, I think starting with a pre-approval obviously is the best place to start when you're looking at buying a property. I think this is a very interesting and maybe slightly controversial stance, but I think right now it may be the best time for a first-time home buyer to buy a property.
Really?
As you know, in Ontario and really across the country, sometimes the value, or in some places the value, have softened. So I think it's a good time for a first-time home buyer to maybe get into the market. And where the rates are higher now than they were 6 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago, if a first-time home buyer can qualify now, when the rates do soften, it could really give them an advantage against their peers. They're prepared. They know what maybe the harder times look like. And, if you're buying a home that maybe is slightly below the market value right now, I think once the rates do soften, we're going to start seeing some increases again in these property values. So maybe slightly controversial, but I do think it's a good time for first-time home buyers to certainly think about getting into the marketplace.
Yeah, no, I think you make a good point, because I think it's quite realistic. We've talked about it here on City News, on the Rob Snow Show and the Sam Laprade Show, that these interest rates that we're seeing are certainly more realistic than some of the historically low interest rates, Clinton. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that unrealistic situation that you put people in, when we see interest rates rise like this, all of a sudden they find themselves in really a crisis situation, right?
Yeah, and I think we're in a little bit of a crisis time right now. I think we're in what we call a storm. And I think the storm is going to continue for the next 12, 18 months. And where this is Financial Literacy Month, obviously, you hit it. The home is typically the biggest asset a family has, and the mortgage is the biggest debt. But it's not the only debt, and it's not the only payment. So I think borrowers really need to focus right now, and especially going into this holiday season, on what the needs are versus the wants. I think we all need to tighten our proverbial financial belt right now. I think it's going to be a challenging year going into 2023 for many Canadians. Obviously inflation is a big piece of it.
Right.
Many borrowers that we work with every day are on a salary, so really they have a fixed income, and the expenses are higher. Obviously, we know mortgage interest is higher, but that's not the only thing that's higher that Canadians are spending their money on every day. So I think it's really kind of doing a little audit. And I think November, where we still have a few days left, it's a great time to kind of look in the mirror and plan going into the holiday season, and really make that plan on what things are going to look like going into 2023.
Well, what did the rates look like at the moment, Clinton, mortgage rates?
I think right now, depending on what type of mortgage product you're looking at somewhere between 5.5% to almost 6%.
Okay.
Typically for a prime mortgage transaction. Fixed rates and variable rates are almost the same. So that's a little bit of an odd situation that we're in right now. Still, we have many borrowers that are choosing to take a variable rate mortgage product. And I'll even venture to say about 70% right now are taking variable. The reason being is we're banking that as things start to soften with inflation, and if we do start going into a recession type situation by the end of next year, many borrowers and many economists think that the rates are going to start softening. So again, maybe a year more of pain that I think we're going to see, but then I think things are going to soften. For those borrowers who, are losing sleep at night or really, really want a fixed rate, we're doing more shorter term fix now.
Okay.
Typically, most borrowers are taking a 5-year rate.
Right.
But we're not doing as many 5-year fixes as we once were. Many borrowers are doing shorter term, and I think like a 3-year fix is very popular right now. It kind of will get us over that hump, and hopefully by that time things will start to balance out a little bit more.
The mortgage stress test, very important before you even start looking to buy. What is this? What is the stress test, and what does it look like exactly, Clinton?
Before the rates increase, every borrower is qualified on the stress test, and we were using a rate of 5.25.
Okay.
But because the rates obviously have increased beyond that point, it's the contract rate plus 2%. So everyone is now qualifying on a higher stress test rate, which means that they can sustain some more increases in the future. The one thing to remember, because the rates are higher today, borrowers can qualify for less than they could have 6 months ago or a year ago. I think that the borrowers that are getting a mortgage today are in a, maybe a better financial position. We know the rates are higher, so your payment's going to be higher, but we know you can handle more, right? Which is really important to kind of remember and think about. Really, what I'm concerned about right now, and I think going into next year, and we're certainly going to be talking about this, on Mortgage 101 and again on City News here in Ottawa and Halifax, we are very concerned about borrowers that are coming up that have a low fixed rate, that are coming up for renewal next year. Many of those borrowers are going to be renewing into a mortgage product that is, in some cases is double the rate that they currently have. I think some of these fixed rates and even a static payment variable is giving a little bit of a false sense of security for some borrowers. So I think that's something to really think about. Know when your mortgage is coming up, and certainly start having those conversations like with an unbiased mortgage professional, 4 months or so prior to the renewal date, so you can really make sure you're in the best possible situation, the best product.
Clinton, what do lenders look at when approving a mortgage?
They really look at 3 things. They look at income, assets, and credit. And they look at them all, and they're all equally really important. As you can imagine, maybe if one's lacking, something else needs to be a little bit stronger. What's really interesting about mortgage lending is there's so many different options. And I think that's really why mortgage brokers, at least right now, are very, very important. I can tell you, obviously in Ontario and really across this country, I'm talking to mortgage professionals about how maybe challenging when clients are coming up for renewal. We certainly know there are some mortgage lenders that are choosing not to offer renewal to borrowers for many reasons. One may be because of where the property values are. Some lenders are wanting to, have another appraisal before they're willing to offer a renewal, because in some markets, the values have obviously softened. So I think that's really important to think about. Obviously, know what's going on with your credit. I think there's lots of free credit monitoring apps. I think that's really important. And have your documents together. Oftentimes, things move very quickly in the mortgage and real estate industry. And I think that if you have all your ducks in a row, it will make your job as a borrower easier, and our job as, mortgage professionals easier as well to provide that expert advice.
Clinton, always appreciate your expert advice. Thanks so much for joining us again here on the Sam Laprade Show.
Thank you very much. And for our listeners, we'll be on with Mortgage 101 this Saturday and Sunday after an hour to give.
Excellent. Always a pleasure. Take care, Clinton. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
That is Clinton Wilkins, sent from Home Lenders Limited. And as he said, you can listen to him on Saturday and Sunday right here on City News. We're going to take a quick break. This is Derek Fage filling in on the Sam Laprade Show. You're watching on Rogers TV and listening on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Hi, my name is Kelly Lee Evans, and I am so excited to be performing for Encore Ottawa 3. Into the deep unknown. My performance will be coming out this week, so stay tuned.
I'm Mallory, and I was walking home one night when an impaired driver hit me. He had been overserved in 2 bars before getting behind the wheel. If the servers would have called him a cab instead of serving him more alcohol, my life would be the same as what it used to be. I think servers play the biggest role in keeping us safe because it's up to them what state the person's in when they leave. Refusing service isn't personal, it's the law.
There we go. Hey, going back in, okay?
It's a new season of The New Fly Fisher on Rogers TV.
Play 4 games of bingo from the comfort of your own home each Monday at 7 p.m. for your chance to win money from our $2,000 regular bingo or $5,000 super bingo night. Kiwanis TV Bingo, Mondays at 7 p.m. on Rogers TV.
Hello, I'm Jim Deeks, host of Canada Files. I hope you'll join me each week for interesting and informative discussions with some of Canada's most impressive people.
City News.
CIWW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 1011 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number 1 for local news, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 1011 everywhere.
It's Friday, November 25th. Good afternoon. I am Damilola Unime. Right now in Ottawa, it is 5 degrees. In Smiths Falls, it is 6. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has now taken the stand on the inquiry into the federal government's use of the Emergencies Act. He is the most anticipated witness and the last person to testify. City News parliamentary reporter Cormac McSweeney joins us with more.
After testifying about his concerns around the Convoy protest and his frustrations with the response from police and the Ontario government's hesitations to get involved with clearing the convoy, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has talked about the decision itself to invoke the act. He says it was in his mind from the start of the convoy, but didn't come to serious discussion until after the second week. He says he kept hearing that police had a plan, and when he got it, he wasn't impressed.
I would recommend people take a look at that actual plan. Which wasn't a plan at all.
Trudeau says he believes the threshold had been met for a public order emergency and says at a meeting of the incident response group with ministers and top security officials, there was a consensus the act should be invoked.
Always, if you have significant disagreements, this is the time to speak up. There was no voice saying, hold it, we don't think you should do this, or I don't think you should do this.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is the last witness to testify. A final report from the Commission will be tabled by February 20th. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
With the weather forecast for Ottawa and the Valley, here is City News meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Well, there may be some leftover freezing rain, freezing drizzle, but it'll switch over to all rain or drizzle and then end around the noon hour. Guaranteed high today, 5 degrees above average. The average high is +2. Mainly cloudy tonight near -3. And for the weekend, plenty of sunshine Saturday, but we get into periods of rain Sunday. For today, the guaranteed high, 5.
City News time is 12:03. There are deals to be had, but you might not need to rush out as in the past years. City News reporter Chris Curris tells us that things today are quieter than he expected.
I went to the Rideau Center where, generally speaking, I expected a lot of people, and I did not get that at all. A few people sitting around, no real lines to speak of other than the Apple store, and even though it was early, I still expected things to be busier, and everyone I spoke to said the same thing. I also went to Best Buy an hour before it opened and spoke to the first person in line who was told to arrive early from a friend who works there.
So he asked me to come early, so yeah, that's the reason I'm here.
here first time at Canada, so yeah, I thought there'll be a pretty big lineup too.
Important to note that when I left, there were only 2 people in line. Chris Curry's City News.
I am Damilola Unime, and for news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Connecting you and your community. This is the Sam Laprade Show on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Sam Laprade Show. Sam is off. She'll be back on Monday. Derek Fage here, host of Daytime Ottawa on Rogers TV, filling in for Sam. We've been bringing you testimony from the Emergencies Act inquiry. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, the last to testify at the Emergencies Act inquiry. Of course, we're going to continue to follow this and bring you some of the latest during our news items. But we're going to take a break from tuning in live there because it's time for a lunch break, and it's time for Lunch with Derek. It's usually Lunch with Sam. Today it is Lunch with Derek. We're joined by Kate Harrison, Vice Chair of Summa Strategies. Good afternoon, Kate. How are you?
I'm well, Derek. How are you?
I'm doing great, thank you. And also joined by Kurt Studley, former Ottawa TV host and host of our Ottawa 67s on Rogers TV, and of course, local real estate agent. Welcome, Kurt. Great to have you here.
Hey, thanks, Derek. Good to be here. Hi, Kate. How are you?
Well, good. How are you, Kurt?
Very good, thanks.
Some interesting things that have come out of the testimony this morning. I think, a couple of things have stood out to me. Number one, that Justin Trudeau testifying that the Emergencies Act has been in the back of their minds even before the convoy arrived, because they had received sort of a crash course in the Emergencies Act, himself and other members of Parliament 2 years before, during the pandemic, because the pandemic was also looked at as a possibility of using the Emergencies Act. Other things that came out is that they looked at extra tools that would be needed to enable them to remove these protesters, things to enable them to bring in sort of special temporary measures. They didn't feel they could get that through legislation quick enough, and for that reason they turned to the Emergencies Act. Those are some of the things that have stood out to me. But Kate, what stood out to you so far during this testimony?
Yeah, that latter part, it was interesting, Derek, because we have seen government move very quickly in exceptional circumstances to pass legislation expeditiously. We saw it happen with the pandemic. We saw how quickly government moved to put subsidies in place. And so I'm not sure that I totally buy the rationale that this was somehow so insurmountable and fellow legislators would not understand the consequence, that they had no other option but to use the EA. So I found that interesting. But I think really what people are looking for today in Trudeau's testimony is whether or not there's any real news. I think he's
right.
very much presenting himself matter-of-factly. I don't think he wants to make news out of this. So depending on kind of how cross-examination from the Convoy lawyer goes, will there be an ability to get under Trudeau's skin? He has a little bit of a flair. I think he feels he's got a sense of humor. Can the Convoy lawyer kind of aggravate him to the degree that he says something maybe a little bit flippant, as he has in the past? I think that that's what he would be trying to avoid, but maybe tempted.
Yeah, I agree. I think most of us following this are looking forward to seeing what that interaction is going to look like. Kurt, what are your thoughts so far on what you've seen?
Well, a couple of interesting things. The point made by the Prime Minister that the Ottawa police plan was not a plan at all, and I think we've all come to realize that they really had no idea what to do or how to put a plan in action. And also the fact that CSIS was ill-equipped to deal with this, not something that they would normally deal with. So I think the Emergencies Act was kind of a last resort that they had in the back of their minds, in their back pocket. And ultimately, because of the progression and the way things were going with the protests downtown, they felt they had no other way to go.
Yeah, and Kate, I guess that's the argument, Kate, that some are making. I made the argument myself, is that people that have been following this looked at it and said, listen, the Ottawa Police Service has failed. The Ontario Provincial Police did not move in. The RCMP did not move in. Nothing was done until the Emergencies Act was invoked. So whether you think it was necessary or not, when it was invoked, something happened. I don't know, Kate. I mean,
and for sure that's the case.
Yeah.
If you're just kind of following day to day, and I think that if you're upset the Emergency Act was invoked, you were going to be upset about it before and during and after. And if you're a rigorous defender of its use, it's probably the same case, and it probably falls along partisan lines. But for the average person in Ottawa, they just wanted to see something done.
Right.
And I think for many it was not about how, but it was about when something would actually happen. And unfortunately, the absence of accountability and leadership at multiple levels of government across law enforcement really created this logjam where nothing happened for some time. So, the debate around the proper usage is an important one. Is it the one that, day-to-day Ottawans, especially those living or working in Centertown, are having? Probably not, because they just wanted the horns to stop and the trucks to move.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, we're going to change topics here because the Ottawa Carleton District School Board, the trustees with Ottawa's largest school board, held a meeting on Tuesday. That meeting got, I guess I could politely say, got a little heated. Here's what I'm going to just play a clip here. Here's what we heard from some of that meeting on Tuesday. Neely, that they're yelling at there, that's new trustee Dr. Neely Kaplan-Mirth, who introduced the motion on Tuesday for masks to be required during all activities except for music and other performing arts or sports where they can't be worn, as well as during lunch or snack breaks. Well, now we've learned that masks will not be mandatory in Ottawa's English public elementary and secondary schools this fall. A motion to introduce that mandatory mask requirement for all student, teachers, and staff in schools fell in a 6-6 tie vote by Ottawa Carleton District School Board trustees Thursday evening, following those 2 nights of debate. But Kurt, just what transpired on Tuesday. I spoke to Rob Snow about this a little bit earlier on in the day, and just felt how disgusted I was. I mean, whether you agree or disagree, I'm just surprised what's supposed to be mature parents showing their children and students how to behave in this type of discussion. It was quite shameful. What did you make of it all, Kurt?
I was shocked at what I saw and heard on Tuesday night, and I wasn't surprised when they decided to have a sort of closed meeting last night. I also wasn't surprised, Derek, that in the end it was a non-decision. I mean, 6-4, 6 against. But I think it's the right decision at this time. Let's face it, we're all aware of what happened during the pandemic and what that meant in terms of our own personal health and the health of our children and so on. So my feeling about it is, look, if you feel that your child is in danger of getting the flu or a respiratory disease or COVID-19, then have your child wear a mask. Or wear a mask yourself. Where I'm seeing more and more people going into grocery stores and big box stores and so on, and many more are wearing masks than in previous months. Mm-hmm. So if you feel the need, if you feel that there's a risk, wear a mask. It's quite simple. But I think mandating just drives people to the point of what we saw on Tuesday night. Not that that's acceptable in any way, but that's the result of talking about another mandate, and I think the word mandate is throwing people into a bit of a frenzy here.
Yeah. What do you make of it all, Kate?
Yeah, I have a pretty similar view. I think there's a difference between whether or not to introduce a mandate and then the behavior that happened at the meeting. And I agree that we're probably past the point of bringing in a mandate for mandate's sake. And we also need to look at how that is being used to kind of mask over a number of issues in the healthcare system, right? No one is really taking a step back, and it's not going to be easy, but no one at a political level is taking a look at the system and what needs to improve and change. Instead, we're trying these Band-Aid solutions like mask mandates to help when capacity is at 200%. I don't think that alone is the silver bullet, and many wouldn't. So there's the issue of the mandate, and then there's the behavior at the council meeting. I'm glad that it was brought forward for an initial public discussion, because I do think parents need to be able to have a say in a forum like that. But unfortunately, you get some really agitated folks in there, and it takes away the opportunity for everybody to have a say and participate. And it would be a shame if that were the case going forward for future council meetings. This incident that occurred hopefully is a one-off, and those meetings will again be able to be public and attended by parents.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point, Kate. I'm glad you gave that sort of overview of the healthcare system in general, because we've been talking about this for years now, is that it's in crisis. The pandemic just made that crisis all the more of an emergency situation. Everybody keeps talking about it. We know some of the solutions, but we've got a federal government that's butting heads with the premiers across Ontario. They want more money, but if you want more money, well, you have to do certain things that we'd like to see as far as data sharing goes across the board, which takes a lot of money. I think a lot of the premiers across the country are saying to themselves, well, that's all well and good, but the money you're going to give us now has to go to technology. But not only do we have a staffing issue, Kate and Kurt, we have a technology issue. Yes. I'm sure you've gone into your own family doctor, I know I have, and looked at some of the archaic system. I mean, it looks like they're working on a Hyperion from the early 1980s.
We don't have a masking issue. We have a healthcare issue. That's the bottom line here.
Yeah, I guess the argument too, Kurt, is if, you said it, maybe mandates, certainly, education is probably the biggest thing right now, but masking, whether it helps 100% or 10%, it's still going to help. And whether it's COVID or the flu or as you said, RSV, respiratory diseases, if it helps a little, won't that go a long way in helping a lot? And I think that's why this conversation at the Ottawa Carleton District School Board happened, because you've got especially younger children, right? Who I'm not sure, Kate, do you have children?
Yeah, I've got a 3-year-old and a 20-month-old.
So there you go.
Both of whom have been through the gauntlet in the last 8 weeks of COVID and RSV and flus here and there, and many, many parents are in the same position. And in talking to them, people are at their wits' end with the system. I waited at CHEO to see a doctor for 12 hours with my son, and that was at Labor Day. It's gotten worse since then.
Yeah.
So definitely this is a real tipping point. If we didn't see it during the pandemic, we're seeing it now. And I think a lot of people there's a dual frustration, because we did what we had to for the last 2.5 years to protect the system. We're trying to get back to real life, and we're seeing again how crumbling that system is, despite our actions for the last 2.5 years. So there's a real resentment, I think, that these problems haven't been addressed and corrected in some way, and they're longer-term problems, but it's testing the patience of Canadians and of parents of young children especially.
Yeah, and the irony of using that word patience.
Yeah. Unintentional pun.
Yeah, I understand that. We're going to take a quick break. I got a couple of other topics I'd like to throw your way, so just stick around with us here. Kate Harrison, Vice Chair of Summa Strategies and Conservative Strategist, and Kurt Studley, former Ottawa TV host and host of our Ottawa 67s on Rogers TV. We'll be back with Lunch with Derek. You're watching on Rogers TV and listening on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Hi, I'm Danielle Allard, and I am a proud Ottawa born and raised singer-songwriter, and I'm part of Encore Ottawa 3. I really hope you like the music and just come and see all of the talent that Ottawa has to offer.
October 5th, 2014, my daughter was hit by a train. She was walking along the sides of the tracks, and it shattered her world.
Do you worry about how much someone drinks?
Do you feel angry or depressed most of the time?
Do you feel neglected or unloved?
Do you feel that if the drinker loved you, she or he would stop drinking?
If you answered yes to any of these questions, you are not alone.
Not everyone trapped by alcohol is an alcoholic.
Families and friends are suffering too. Al-Anon and Alateen can help. Call 1-866-200-0223 or visit alanon.org/help.
Behold Emily Carr, painter, about to encounter the force that will consume her life.
How tightly they sealed their secrets from me, humble and pleading before the great trees, awaiting the invitation from the Spirit to come meet me halfway. Nothing is still now, everything is alive. At last, I knew I must see through the eye of the totem itself, the mythic eye of the forest.
Seldom able to live by her brush, before she died in 1945, Emily Carr was in the first rank of Canadian painters.
This is my country. What I want to express is here, and I love it. Amen.
From coast to coast, all across Canada, there's something very special going on. It's time to show your support. Time to spread the word. Time to demonstrate your commitment to safe and sober driving. Join thousands of Canadians and tie a ribbon on something or someone you love. And take the time to have a real conversation about impaired driving. Mad Project Red Ribbon. Tie it, wear it, show it, share it, live it. Find out more at mad.ca.
Join me for Season 3 of Paula Roy's Favorite Foods. Whew, that was a lot. I think I need a nap. This week on Simply Cooking by Chef, simple salads that will last all week in the fridge, give you a burst of flavor, and will please a big crowd.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Sam Laprade Show. Derek Fage here from Rogers TV, filling in for Sam. It's Lunch with Derek. We're joined by Kate Harrison and Kurt Studley. We continue our lunch conversation with the two of them. News is that an organizer of the Freedom Convoy says he's planning a reunion in Ottawa in February. My goodness, citizens of Ottawa must be incredibly excited to hear this news. On Facebook, he is calling for a Freedom Convoy 2.0 from February 17th to the 21st, asking people to bookmark the dates. He is calling this the Freedom Convoy Reunion, and the theme is going to be the Olive Branch Edition. How do you think that's going to go over, Kurt?
I don't think that's going to fly at all, Derek. Like, you know what? You can have a reunion, just have it somewhere else.
My goodness. Kate, can you imagine what would happen if another group of people rolled into downtown Ottawa?
No one wants the sequel. That's usually the case. But I think there's a real, not that there's, I think there's already been considerable damage done to kind of the cause of the convoy, if you will, at least back in early February. This was about lifting restrictions.
Right.
If there's going to be a reunion, I would question what the purpose of that is, because restrictions have been lifted. The vaccine mandate is no more. And so if that was the real rallying cry for those that were here, then what would be the reason to return? So, consider it advance notice that, for whatever reason, law enforcement didn't have before or did not act on before it was too late. But there is really no excuse at any level for something like this happening again and stretching on for days on end. Protest is fine. Lawful protest is good and healthy for democracy, but coming here and parking trucks for days on end simply just can't happen again.
Well, I don't think they get into downtown or get anywhere close this time around. For sure.
Well, yeah, and I mean, calling this, unity. I always remind people, especially posting things on social media. don't think you don't have as much influence as you think you really do. Right. If you think you're coming here and you're going to help unite the division that was made between the protest and citizens of Ottawa, you're fooling yourself. I can tell you that.
I'd like to know what this olive branch is. What exactly does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, he's trying. He goes on to say something about let's be grown up, start addressing the root of division, discrimination, and segregation in Canada by changing our focus away from division of one word, and that word is unity. Well, this isn't going to help your situation. I guarantee that. Coming back to Ottawa, trying to unite people, it's not going to work. It is Black Friday today. You've got Cyber Monday coming up. Kate, do you take advantage of either of these?
Typically, I'm a historic Black Friday shopper, up at 4 or 5 in the morning. My toddler's keeping me up the night before. Meant I was a little bit late on the game this time. But, I think that this is a bit of a different year for holiday shopping for many. We've heard about it just in the news, shorter lines and fewer people in stores. And I think that it's a bit of a trend that we're observing. There's a little less holiday shopping going on with the economic downturn and some troubles ahead. So I think that the sales are likely to just keep extending in order to pull people into the store. It's less about the 24-hour intention to buy.
Yeah, I agree. What do you think, Kurt? Have you started any Christmas holiday shopping?
Oh, I was involved in the pre-Black Friday deals, the pre week before the Black Friday deals, and there's Black Friday deals to be had today, and I think, like Kate said, they're going to continue. So Black Friday is no longer a day.
Yeah.
It's about 2 weeks or more.
It's true.
Where you can take advantage of the best price that I think these retailers have to offer, and we're definitely going to see a downturn in spending when it comes to Christmas this year. I was watching some news stories about, the only thing we're not going to skimp on is our kids. But otherwise, I think you'll see a lot less of the traditional, I'll go out and get this sort of thing and spend a few extra $100. I don't think it's going to happen this year.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Just a reminder, too, people that are shopping, supporting local. A lot of us like to sit at home too and shop online. And I always like to remind people that, especially during the pandemic, a lot of our local businesses invested to either become online or to make their online presence more robust. So before you turn to that box store, maybe just look around a bit. Quickly want to get to this. The Ottawa Senators sit in last place, tied with the Anaheim Ducks. Big game this afternoon. The 6-12-1 Ottawa Senators versus the 6-13-1 Anaheim Ducks. Two teams. Can you imagine these two teams tied for last place with everyone talking about the summer of Pierre Dorion and everything that happened? If Ottawa doesn't come away with maybe at least one or even both wins this weekend, do you think it's time DJ Smith may finally lose his job? I'll start with you, Kate.
There's going to be some tough questions for sure. I mean, it's been a team. I don't think anybody's been sugarcoating the rebuild and how it's going to be painful and take some time. But, fans have been very, very patient. They're starting to lose that patience. I think it was last week where, there was some of the crowd booing the performance of the Sens on the ice. And so it's not in a good place, and we're getting to a point in the season for many teams where that kind of decision-making has to happen if there's any hope of turning things around for the spring.
Very quickly, Kurt, what do you think?
My prediction, Derek, is if they don't beat Anaheim today, then DJ Smith is gone. It's always the coach who's the sacrificial lamb,
Yeah.
When you look at it, they're just not playing well enough. And to me, that's on the players, and the coach can do whatever the coach can do, but obviously you can't fire the whole team.
Yeah. And on that, on speaking of hockey, by the way, how about those Ottawa 67s, Kurt?
Oh, they're fantastic. Now, they did lose. They have lost their last two games, which is the first time this season, but they're 18-3.
It's amazing.
And they've been on the road for a while, so we'll see how they come back in the next couple of games.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Thank you both for joining me today on Lunch with Derek. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Derek. Thanks, Kurt.
Thank you, Kate.
All right, take care. That's Kate Harrison, Vice Chair of Summa Strategies and Conservative Strategist, and Kurt Studley, real estate agent, former Ottawa TV host, and not former because he's also the host of Ottawa 67's hockey on Rogers TV. So make sure you tune into that. We'll be back with more. This is Derek Fage filling in on the Sam Laprade Show. You're watching on Rogers TV and listening on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Every year, dozens of Canadians are killed or seriously injured because they take risks around railway tracks. Talk to your loved ones about rail safety. Visit stoptracktragedies.ca.
Hi, my name is Kelly Lee Evans, and I am so excited to be performing for Encore Ottawa 3. My performance will be coming out this week, so stay tuned.
It's closing time, and you stayed out longer than you planned. So now you can't drive, and the buses have stopped running. You could always call your girlfriend. Or maybe your roommate? What about your best friend? You could just dial 1-888-TAXI Guy or use the Taxi Guy app. The call and the app are free, and they both connect you to a local cab company to bring you home safely. Visit arrivealive.org to find out more. Arrive Alive, drive sober.
Do you have something to share? Let everyone know about your next meeting, your need for volunteers, or your fundraising event on the Rogers TV Community Billboard. Send us your words and we'll bring them to life on Rogers TV and rogerstv.com. When it's time to spread the word, go to rogerstv.com to add your announcement to the community billboard.
Play 4 games of bingo from the comfort of your own home each Monday at 7 p.m. for your chance to win money from our $2,000 regular bingo or $5,000 super bingo night. Kiwanis TV Bingo, Mondays at 7 p.m. on Rogers TV.
Number 1 for local news, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 101.1 everywhere.
It's Friday, November 25th. Good afternoon. I am Damilola Unime. Right now in Ottawa, it is 4 degrees. In Smith Falls, it is 5. And here's what's making news this hour. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says he is absolutely confident that invoking the Emergencies Act was the right decision. Trudeau is the final witness to testify at the inquiry investigating the government's use of the Emergencies Act to clear blockades in Ottawa and at several border crossings. As he defended his government's decision, Trudeau painted a picture of Canada closing in on the edge of violence during the Convoy protests. And 2 of the area OPP detachments are beginning their festive ride campaigns this weekend. It'll run from now until January 2nd. Both the Killaloe and Bancroft detachments are starting the campaign aimed at taking those impaired by drugs and alcohol off the roads. Police forces say they will be highly visible this holiday season with the month until Christmas Day. And people should expect to see ride campaigns through their areas. And Quebec is making the flu vaccine free for all residents this year. In previous years, the shots had only been free for certain high-risk groups and for healthcare workers. Health officials reversed the position due to the higher levels of influenza, RSV, and COVID-19. The department says it is encouraging people over 60, those with chronic illnesses, and certain pregnant women to get vaccinated, as well as those living with high-risk individuals. City News time is 12:32. I am Damilola Unime. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Sam Laprade Show. Sam off today, back on Monday. Derek Fage here, host of Daytime Ottawa on Rogers TV, filling in for Sam. If you tuned in last Friday when I was filling in for Sam, you would have heard my little curling story and my passion for curling. It's a sport that I was introduced to about 5 years ago and have become obsessed with the sport, I think is probably the best way to describe it. And, you know, from taking the Learn to Curl program and now 5 years in, just, you know, what a wonderful, accessible sport, and so excited because I have never been to a professional competition before, and I know all curling fans in Ottawa and beyond are excited because the 2023 BKT Tires and OK Tire World Men's Curling Championship is coming to Ottawa next April. And here to tell us more about it, I'm joined by the Senior Vice Chair and Spokesperson and with the Volunteer Hosts Committee, Elaine Brimacombe. Elaine, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Derek. How exciting.
Oh, no kidding. And let's just talk about this sport and its growing popularity, Elaine. I mean, what an incredible success story here in Canada, but it has grown exponentially beyond the borders of this country as well.
Oh, absolutely. You know, right now I'm looking at the list of teams that'll be here in Canada and Ottawa. We've got Turkey. You know, who would have thought that Turkey would be qualifying to come to a world championship, but they'll be here, and that just shows you the explosion of the sport. It's been fantastic.
What do you think? What do you think it owes its success for globally now? As I said, I think it's been popular for many years here in this country, but what do you think it owes its success for outside of Canada?
That's a really good question. I think one thing about grassroots curling, so if we look at, you know, set aside the highly competitive teams, but for grassroots curling is the affordability of curling. So it's quite an affordable sport to get into, and then there's always lots of support for curlers as they're learning to grow and develop in the game. You know, there's a huge volunteer contingent that help people grow and develop, and I think that's what makes it attractive for grassroots curlers. And then for those more competitive curlers, you know, they've seen the success that other countries have had, and they want to, you know, mirror that success or exceed that success. So I think it's a win-win for everybody.
And something that has stood out to me as well, Elaine, is the accessibility of the sport. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that and expand on how accessible the sport of curling really is.
Yeah, for sure. And funny you bring that up because today I'm sitting at the RA Center where we just had the grand opening of their fully accessible community space, barrier-free and universal. And that's the one thing that curling can take pride in that there are a lot of different ways to deliver a curling rock. So, for example, you do the traditional slide from the hack, but there's also stick delivery for people who, you know, have some mobility issues, and there's wheelchair curling. And wheelchair curling has really picked up in popularity, and we're all working towards making it more popular across Canada right now.
Yeah, and Elaine, I think when people think of curling, you know, outside of seeing these, you know, the professionals at the top of their game, where you're seeing, you know, more and more young people or a mix of young and veteran curlers, are we seeing that? Are we seeing those next generations now coming into the local clubs across the country?
Yeah, I think we are. And one of the reasons I think we're seeing the explosion of curling is that they've developed these new games, these, you know, mixed doubles. So, you know, only requires two-person team versus a four-person team. It's a shorter game, usually done in an hour and a half, versus a 2-hour game. So I think looking at these new opportunities for curling, it really has expanded the game.
Let's turn back to the World Men's Curling Championships here being presented by BK Tires and OK Tire. Volunteer recruitment, as I understand, is going well, but there are still opportunities to volunteer out there. Tell us how people can get involved volunteering.
Sure. So if somebody would like to volunteer, they should go to the Curling Canada website and click on Get Involved, and that will take them to the registration page to volunteer. It takes 317 volunteers to run this event, and right now we have 264 volunteers registered. So we're still looking for a few more, and in particular, we're looking for volunteers who'd like to be in the patch.
Well, who doesn't want to be in the patch? You have to describe this, because I think that's also what's really special about this sport is how accessible the participants are, how accessible the actual curlers are to their audience.
Yeah, I don't know of another sport, that is this accessible. So the Aberdeen Pavilion at TD Place will be the patch, and for those who aren't familiar with the term the patch in curling, that's where there's daily entertainment, food, beverage services, games, contests, live entertainment, and all the players come into the patch after their game. And they mingle with the crowd. We have it's called Up Close and Personal, where people get the chance to talk to these elite curlers, sit around, have an adult beverage or a soft drink, and just chit chat. And it's always a ton of fun, and it's free. Anybody can go in. You don't need a ticket. You don't need to be watching a game and then go to the patch. Anybody can go in anytime.
Oh yeah, I cannot wait, because as I said off the top, I've never actually been to a competition. As I also said, I've become obsessed, so I watch it on TV consistently, but I've never been. So from a friend of mine, Mike Stagg, who you probably know, and I are going to be going. So I'm looking forward to that. You also have a school program. Tell me about the school program.
Yes, we do. So we have a school program that's free for any elementary school that would like to participate. It's geared for grades 4 and up. We provide all the lesson plans and some materials for the kids. And then each child that takes the school program gets a ticket to a draw. It's usually a morning draw, and it's a ton of fun to have like 500 kids in the arena supporting their own, in this case, country. So usually the kids will pick a country and they'll support that country. They'll learn about that country at school. They'll learn about curling, and then they'll come out and watch that team play and cheer them on, and it is a ton of fun. And that's also available for any other community group that would like to participate. So if there's Girl Guides, Boy Scouts, 4-H clubs, then we can provide them with the materials as well.
Oh, what a great initiative.
Get kids involved.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's a ton of fun.
It sounds like it. What are ticket sales going like that? That's why I got you on the show now, because I thought if I waited until the new year, it could be sold out, because from what I could see online, that ticket sales are going quite well.
Yeah, we're really happy with the ticket sales. So right now, we're selling full event packages and weekend packages, and single tickets won't go on sale until closer to the event.
Okay.
So I think if people, they want to take advantage of the full event, or the opening weekend or closing weekend, they should probably hop on to the website, Curling Canada, and buy tickets.
So Elaine, what does those two packages look like? If you could just expand on what those are.
So right now, there's 3 packages that are up for we're selling. There's the opening weekend, which the opening ceremony is free to anybody who wants to watch it, and then there'd be tickets for that Saturday and Sunday game. I don't have the price off the top of my head though, and then the closing weekend, so that would be all your medal games and any tiebreakers that get to the medals. But each day, so if you were to take Monday, you would probably have 3 draws, let's say 9, 2, and 6. And I'm just sort of drawing time slots out of my head here.
Right.
So you have a ticket for that day. And then at each of those draws, there's up to 5 games being played at once.
Again.
So it's a ton of curling.
Yeah, exactly. You're going to get your money's worth. Just going back to, those that are listening right now and interested in the sport, and, maybe they're a little intimidated because they've watched it on TV and they think, how can I possibly, get into a sport like this when you watch it on TV and the perfection. But I think what's really interesting about this sport too, Elaine, is you can have some immediate success. It may take years to perfect and, certainly become a professional, but it is something where you can go on the ice and get some immediate success, which, and just the social aspect is so much fun as well, Elaine.
Well, for sure. And you mentioned that you did a Learn to Curl program, I think, at the RCMP.
That's right.
And most curling clubs in this area have a Learn to Curl program. And that's, coaches and instructors teach people how to be safe on the ice. They teach them how to deliver a rock, sweep a rock, teach them the strategy of the game. And, probably after a couple of lessons, people are throwing that rock up and down the ice and sweeping and having a great time. And as you said, the social aspect of curling is huge.
Yeah, absolutely. Elaine, really appreciate your time today. Thanks so much for joining me here on the show.
Well, thank you, Derek, and work on your sweeping technique, eh?
Oh, well said, Elaine. Okay, you got me. I love it. Thanks again. That's Elaine Brimacombe, Senior Vice Chair and Spokesperson with the Volunteer Host Committee. And if you didn't listen to the show last Friday, I was getting picked on at the club because they felt I wasn't sweeping in front of the rock enough. So I've been practicing that, I'll tell you, for the rest of my my friends over there at the RCMP club. But again, the World Men's Curling Championship coming to Ottawa April 1st to the 9th. Next year, that's going to be at TD Place. You can find out all the information. Those ticket packages are available. You can head over to curling, www.curling.ca /2023 World Men, or if you just go to curling.ca, you can find out information. And on there, too, you can find out the rules of the game and how to participate. Elaine mentioned those Learn to Curls. Most clubs have the Learn to Curl programs. And the beauty of it is I had somebody reach out to me last week asking about it and, do I have to buy equipment? No, if you join Learn to Curl programs, for the most part, they provide the equipment for you early on, so you'll just actually put on a slider. They'll provide a broom for you, a stabilizer, which you're seeing even some professionals use. So if you're a little worried about your balance on the ice and that kind of thing, delivering it with just the broom, you don't have to worry, because there are things like stabilizers out there that make it a lot easier, especially when you're being introduced to the sport. Again, really excited about the Men's World Championships coming here to Ottawa. Again, that's April 1st to 9th. We're going to take a break. We'll be back with more. This is Derek Fage filling in for Sam Laprade. You're watching on Rogers TV and listening on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Hello, I'm Jim Deeks, host of Canada Files. I hope you'll join me each week for interesting and informative discussions with some of Canada's most impressive people.
Hi, I'm Danielle Allard, and I am a proud Ottawa born and raised singer-songwriter, and I'm part of Encore Ottawa 3. I really hope you like the music and just come and see all of the talent that Ottawa has to offer.
On Friday's Daytime Ottawa, Misto Fine Foods is going to be joining us on the show. They've gone through a very, very difficult time. We'll tell you about some of their challenges and how they've remained in business during these difficult times. We'll also introduce you to Ottawa-born and now living in Brooklyn, Michael Kaiswalter joins us on the show to talk about his new project. It's called The Moth Project, what's coming to Ottawa. And we'll tell you about a brand new art show right here on Daytime.
It isn't the heavy trays that make the job difficult, or the fast pace you need to keep up. It's not working another double because someone called in sick. What makes the job tough is the moment you realize a customer has had enough, and you have to make that decision not to overserve. Refusing service isn't personal, it's the law. We know it's not easy, but we're counting on you to keep us all safe. Thank you, servers, for doing the tough job.
Hey folks, it's me, Giovanni Patini, the host of the RTV quiz show, the hottest show on television. It's the hilarious quiz show where you, the viewers, play for valuable non-existent prizes. It's got great trivia, fun facts, and a lot of laughs, all blended together in a perfect cocktail of edutainment. So join us Wednesdays at 7:30 right here on Rogers TV. Nice.
What is it? Anxiety disorder. Depression.
I'm clear. PTSD.
1 in 2. A flip of a coin.
That's the same chance we'll experience a mental illness by the time we're 40. $1 a day can help change those odds and bring hope to those in need.
October 5th, 2014, my daughter was hit by a train. She was walking along the sides of the tracks, and it shattered her world.
Join me for Season 3 of Paula Roy's Favorite Foods. Whew, that was a lot. I think I need a nap.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News.
1011 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Sam Laprade Show. Derek Fage here from Rogers TV filling in for Sam. Just a reminder that the Prime Minister is testifying at the Emergencies Act inquiry. That is still ongoing. Please stay tuned for our news breaks as we'll get you caught up with this. We're following it. We're going to break it down for you. We're going to summarize it for you so you have a good understanding of what we heard from the Prime Minister today. He is the last person to testify at the inquiry, and this has been much anticipated, so we'll make sure we get you all that information. Also today is Black Friday. Chris Curries was out a little bit earlier on today, seeing if there's any early lineups. I believe he was at Best Buy and Canadian Tire just shortly after 7 a.m. this morning and said the lineups weren't very big, but it's a different year this year, and as it has been actually for the last couple of years, but this year in particular, a lot of people struggling to make ends meet. It's difficult to do that while also fighting the urges and temptations to spend, to buy that gift for a family member or a friend. It's that time of year again, right? It's Black Friday. We got Cyber Monday coming upon us here to talk about maybe some strategies we should be using, especially during this time of high inflation. I'm joined by Sarah Stashu. She's a PR communications specialist with Bromwich and Smith. Welcome to the show, Sarah.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Sarah, am I right? Have you seen, today I'm sure you're hearing about what lineups are looking like, and not only probably here in Canada, but in the United States, because this is always, sort of follows around American Thanksgiving, and this kind of spending spree, is this culture of it, I guess, has made its way into Canada a few years ago. What do you think we're seeing this year as opposed to previous years?
For sure. So we know that, it's kind of that irrational spending season, Black Friday, Cyber Monday. And typically, you're right, the lineups are crazy and the deals are just kind of too good to miss, right? But this year, we're seeing that the average Canadian is actually planning on spending 17% less this holiday season than they did last year. So that tells us that Canadians are worried about their pocketbooks. They know that with inflation and interest rate hikes, they're actually worried about how they're going to go through holiday season with shopping as well.
Well, let's offer then some smart budgeting tips for those out there to take maybe a little less stress off. You say go on a cash diet. What do you mean by that?
So we mean instead of taking out that credit card that you're going to actually end up in having extra interest charges on, pay cash if you can. If you can't pay cash, pay debit. We know it's kind of one of those things that there's still stores that are cash free right now. So if you're going to use a credit card, make sure you're using a credit card that actually works for you, has the cash back or the extra miles or perks that you actually get money back at the end of the day for what you've spent on it.
And hopefully be able to pay the balance off, right?
Exactly.
Those interest rates are incredibly high. Another thing you say is to identify consumer spending traps. What are some of those spending traps we should keep an eye on?
Yeah, one of the things we're kind of talking about a lot this year is knowing what your spending triggers are. A trigger could be any situation. It could be an emotion, a place, or a person that tempts you to spend more money. So, that feeling you get when you walk into your favorite store, or that all the compliments you get from that sales member who's trying to really promote you. So once you know what your triggers are, knowing how to avoid them, maybe not shopping with that shopping buddy who encourages you to spend more money. But, we know that it's going to happen. Shopping is a feel-good. It's a retail therapy for some people. So we're not saying cut it out completely, but knowing what those triggers are, putting that money aside for that actual situation and going from there from a plan.
Sarah, really appreciate your time today. Thanks so much for joining us.
No problem. Thanks again.
All right, take care. That's Stara Stashu, PR communication specialist with Bromwich and Smith. And I mentioned earlier on in the show, a lot of people talk about online shopping, and certainly, when it comes to Black Friday and Cyber Monday, most people's attention goes to the big box stores. And I want to encourage you that a lot of our small businesses have spent a great deal of money creating their own online presence, especially during the pandemic, or if they did have an online presence, making that online presence more robust. And with that, I want to introduce you to, and if you're not familiar with this local small business, you should, because they've been around for many, many years. A wonderful member of the community, Patty Taggart from Tagalong Toys, joining us. How are you, Patty?
Oh, great there. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's been a while since we talked. It's great to have you here. For those that perhaps are just familiarizing themselves with Tagalong Toys with this interview for the first time, tell us a little bit about the history of Tagalong.
Well, I opened up my toy store in 2001 out in Canada, and was out there for about 18 years, closed that location, but have a second location that I'd opened about 8 years ago in the Blue Heron Mall.
Right.
And my background is early child education, so it kind of went together that I went from working on the floor, working with children and kids in childcare field, and thought, oh, you know what? The west end of Ottawa at that time needed a toy store, so that's how I got all started. And I still teach at Algonquin part-time, so I have my background in early child education and obviously a toy expert, as some like to tell me.
Yeah, I like that idea because, if anyone's going to curate, right, great toys, it's somebody like yourself, right, with that kind of background. And I did mention, online, how a lot of businesses, have put substantial amounts of money to make themselves a great online presence, and you have exactly that as well, right?
Yes, we do. Actually, it's been really, I have to say, it's been really fabulous. I have had a website probably for about 16 years, and the website was very, very outdated, and I just recently launched my new website 3 weeks ago yesterday, and the response has been incredible. Like people coming in, the store and saying, I saw your website, I'm here for this, this, and this. So it's really nice because now my POS system and my inventory is all linked. So there's no more story it's out of stock and upsetting people. My website is brand new, and I'm very active on social media with, Facebook and Instagram. So we get a lot of people through those areas as well. Lots from Instagram and Facebook.
Yeah, and you offer some unique things as well, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you still offer your 10% discounts to teachers and educators, right?
Yes, we do. Every day, 10% off to teachers and educators. And we have a Grandparents' Day, which was yesterday, which we offer 20% off to our grandparents the last Thursday of every month. We do free gift wrapping. We special order items all the time. And again, we have a great website where, we can ship things. We do lots of local deliveries and curbside pickup too.
Yeah, and on your website, you can shop by age, by category, by brand as well, which I think really helps a lot of people shopping because, sometimes if you're buying for, maybe an extended family member or like a niece or a nephew, you're not really sure what to get perhaps. And I think the fact that you break it down by age and category can certainly help a lot of people. What are some of the gifts that you're seeing that, of interest to people at the store these days?
Well, one of the big categories for us always is crafts. Crafts has got to be one of the biggest sections. And one of the big things this year has been slime making kits. We have this fabulous kit. It's quite big, and the kids can make different, types of slime with like textures in them, with glitter in them. That's really been big. The other thing that's really popular that I have, it's called a Wizard's Cauldron. It's a chemistry set. And so you get a little cauldron, and the kids get all these different items that they can do is mix together to create different potions and different science experiments. And it's been really popular. But crafts and board games, oh my gosh, I cannot keep board games in stock. If you asked me to give you a title, I don't even know if I could keep track. Board games have to be one of the best sellers. People this time of year, they're spending more time together, so they're looking, winter's coming, I need something to have for indoor play. But board games are huge, and we've got, my big one I have to tell you, because every time I do this on the radio, it puts it through the roof, but lava lamps.
I love lava lamps.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
So
you
awesome.
should see the selection of lava lamps that I have right now. They are beautiful. When you're looking for something for somebody you don't know really well or trying to find something really unique, that's my go-to gift. Get a lava lamp. You can use them in your bedroom. You could use them anywhere in your house.
Oh, well said. Patty, always a pleasure catching up with you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
You too. Great to chat with you as well. Thank you so much.